Chapter 601. Jingchu Province, Danyang City. The sudden rise of the Bank of the Four Seas brought Di Chen and the others together again. Really, they don't even let us have peace during the new year. Someone couldn't help but grumble. It was rare that all 6 members of the Yan-Huang Alliance were present. Everyone, let's talk. How should we deal with the operation against the Bank of the Four Seas? As the host, Lord Chunshin took on the role of moderator. Seeing this, Di Chen couldn't help but frown, but he didn't say anything. The current situation required the alliance to work together. Di Chen didn't want to start a fight with Lord Chunshin. It had to be said that Di Chen's growth was shocking. What should we do? In my opinion, we should just hire some people to destroy those banks. Military Kill Ripper said, gritting his teeth. In the Battle of Mo Bay, Military Kill Ripper was in a sorry state. He hated Ouyang Shua to the core. Don't be silly. Di Chen frowned. The Bank of the Four Seas branch in the capital is under the protection of the Imperial Court, and is guarded by the army. Don't be stained with blood before you can accomplish anything. Military Kill Ripper didn't say anything. He knew that what he said was just out of anger. After the Battle of Mo Bay, Military Kill Ripper's position in the alliance was probably even lower than Wandering Huan's. In fact, the members of Military Kill Ripper's family were already dissatisfied with him as their representative. Because of this, Military Kill Ripper didn't dare to talk back to Di Chen. If his family wanted to stabilize their position in the game, they still needed the support of Di Chen's family. The rise of the Bank of the Four Seas is unstoppable. What we need to do now is to take action and absorb the idle funds of adventure-type players. We can't let the Alliance of Mountains and Seas monopolize everything. Di Chen decided. Good. Wolf Warrior was the first to express his support. In this aspect, the Huitong Bank is willing to help. Lord Chunshin finally found an opportunity and said with a smile. In reality, when he found out that the Bank of the Four Seas was making a move, Lord Chunshin was first surprised, then overjoyed. He had already realized that this was an opportunity to influence the alliance. Among the territories of the Yan-Huang Alliance, the Huitong Bank in Danyang City was the largest and had the most professionals. It was indeed the best choice to oppose the Bank of the Four Seas. Although Di Chen wasn't happy, he didn't know how to refute. I agree. Unexpectedly, Xiongba was the first to express his support for Lord Chunshin. Hearing this, Di Chen's eyes flashed with a hint of doubt. Even Battle Wolf glanced at Xiongba faintly. On the other hand, Xiongba's expression remained calm after saying these words, as if he had no idea what kind of shocking waves his actions would cause in the alliance. Since when did Xiongba get back together with Lord Chunshin? This was the doubt in Di Chen and the others' hearts. Involuntarily, they recalled the time when the 6 hegemons of Handan City were still around. It was at that time, under the urging of Xiongba, that Lord Chunshin resolutely broke away from the 6 hegemons of Handan and started his own business. The world was ever-changing. After rebuilding the Yan-Huang Alliance, because of the conflict of interests, the two of them had gradually drifted apart. In fact, because of Xiongba's protection of Piaolinghuan, the two of them had already become enemies. Who would have thought that Xiongba was indeed a formidable person? Everything was based on benefits. As long as he felt that working with Lord Chunshin would bring him benefits, Xiongba did not mind putting down the grudges between the two of them and working together again. After a period of ups and downs, the current Lord Chunshin was filled with mixed feelings and gradually matured. The two of them working together again naturally came to fruition. With Xiongba expressing his stance, Di Chen knew that there was no way to continue and could only admit defeat. I also agree. Lord Chunshin smiled slightly. Since that is the case, then let's talk about the specific distribution of shares. Battle Wolf said. According to the information I received, 1% of the shares of the Bank of the Four Seas is worth 200,000 gold coins. Since we want to compete with the Bank of the Four Seas, we naturally cannot lower our value. I think we should use this as the benchmark. Lord Chunshan said. No. Di Chen, Battlewolf, and the others did not even think and directly refused. Why not? Lord Chunshan did not give in. The Bank of the Four Seas has its own unique reasons for being able to obtain such a valuation. Di Chen was somewhat amused by Lord Chuanshan's appetite. First, in terms of scale, the Bank of the Four Seas has long established branches in Lingxi City and other territories. It is the #1 bank in China. From start to finish, Shanghai City has invested no less than 1 million gold coins into the Bank of the Four Seas. In addition, Shanghai City's monthly net financial income is regularly invested into the Bank of the Four Seas. Just based on this, can the Bank of the Four Seas do it? According to what I know, the Bank of the Four Seas only serves Danyang City, right? Don't even talk about injecting capital into it. The savings that the Bank of the Four Seas has already been sucked dry by Danyang City. Right now, the Bank of the Four Seas is just an empty shell. Di Chen continued. You! Lord Chunshan was somewhat angered by what he said. In his heart, he was even more bewildered. Lord Chunshan did not expect that Di Chen would have such a thorough understanding of the Bank of the Four Seas. The legendary intelligence organization, Emperor Wind, was indeed extraordinary. Second, Di Chen did not care, and continued. The Bank of the Four Seas is able to gain the recognition of adventure-type players, mainly because of the supreme reputation that Shanghai City has established. Therefore, the leaders of guilds like Bloody Romance are willing to fork out money. If the Bank of the Four Seas wants to compete with the Bank of the Four Seas, it must borrow the reputation and resources of the entire Yan-Huang alliance. The two cannot be mentioned in the same breath. Brother Di Chen is right. This time, War Wolf stood firmly on Di Chen's side. Lord Chuanshan's appetite was a little too big. Then how much do you think it is worth? Lord Chuanshan was a businessman, and bargaining was practically his instinct. He did not expect that his proposal would be accepted. If he said that, it would only increase the value of the Bank of the Four Seas. 50,000 gold coins, and Danyang City cannot have a controlling stake. Di Chen threw out his proposal. Are you joking? Lord Chuanshan was like a cat whose tail had been stepped on, and suddenly jumped up. I am very serious. Di Chen was rather calm. Since that is the case, then we might as well break up. 50,000 gold coins? Are you trying to get rid of a beggar? Lord Chuanshan's attitude did not soften in the slightest. Against the Bank of the Four Seas, it is not necessary to have the Bank of the Four Seas. Di Chen said unhurriedly. This was the biggest bargaining chip in Di Chen's hand. Up to now, the situation had basically become a confrontation between Di Chen and Lord Chuanshan. War Wolf and the others clearly saw Di Chen as the leader. Even Xiong Ba did not want to see Lord Chuanshan make an exorbitant demand, and tactfully maintained his silence. So what? The Bank of the Four Seas is the blood and sweat of our entire family. You can't just not reap what you sow, can you? Lord Chuanshan saw that direct confrontation was not going to work, so he played the emotional card. Danyang City must hand over the controlling stake. As for the valuation, I can add another 10,000 gold coins. This is the limit of what I can do. Do you agree or not? Just give me a straightforward answer. Di Chen forced Lord Chuanshan into a corner. War Wolf and the others did not say a word. At this time, tacit consent meant agreement. Seeing this, Lord Chuanshan could only helplessly choose to accept. In the end, he still said unwillingly, hand over the controlling stake, and Danyang City must also be the largest shareholder. Otherwise, I will not be able to answer to my family. Fine. Increase the valuation by another 20,000 gold coins. Lord Chuanshan still did not give up. Don't push your luck. Di Chen's patience was about to run out. As a descendant of an imperial family, Di Chen did not like this kind of haggling in the marketplace. Then add another 10,000. This is also my bottom line. Lord Chunshin was about to act shamelessly. Different from Di Chen, businessmen were sometimes very willing to put down their pride for a bit of profit. Seeing this, Di Chen exchanged a look with Warwolf and the others, and said helplessly, "Fine, then 1%. The valuation is 70,000 gold coins. There is only one condition. The capital must be converted into the bank's reserve." "That is natural." Lord Chunshin was tactful. After a battle of words, both sides finally reached an agreement. "Should we learn from the Bank of the Four Seas and pull in other guilds to invest?" Warwolf asked. "Yes. But their valuation must be 200,000 gold coins per point." Lord Chunshin was unequivocal. This time, Di Chun and the others were astonishingly unanimous. They did not object. To these aristocratic families, if they did not play some tricks, how could they show off their abilities? As for how to keep it a secret and not let the leaders of the guilds find out, the difference in valuation between the two was like heaven and earth. They naturally had their ways. Next was the discussion of the specific shares. The 6 lords naturally could not be divided equally. Within the alliance, there was a difference between high and low shares. Lord Chunshin, as the owner of Huitong Bank, had 18 shares, making him the largest shareholder. Di Chun had 15 shares, Warwolf and Tyrant each had 12 shares, Military Killbreaker and Wandering Huan each had 10 shares. The remaining 23 shares were reserved for the guilds that cooperated with Yan-Huang Alliance. In this way, Huitong Bank could raise 8.73 million gold coins, 3 million more than the 6 million gold coins of the Bank of the Four Seas. Naturally, this was because Lord Chunshin had contributed more than 80% of the shares. One had to know that Shanghai City had 60% of the shares in the Bank of the Four Seas, and had absolute control. The next day, Huitong Bank announced through the Daily News that it was officially open for business. The reserve of the bank was also exaggerated to 10 million gold coins. As such, it attracted the interest of some players. The overall credibility of the Yan-Huang Alliance made the players feel more at ease. However, Huitong Bank had to wait until after the new year to establish a branch in the 9 king cities. Lord Chunshin and the rest did not plan ahead like Ouyang Shua. The two banks would definitely have a fierce battle after the new year. On New Year's Eve, Ouyang Shua ended his vacation and returned to Shanghai City. Towards Huitong Bank's actions, Ouyang Shua's attitude was unexpectedly straightforward. "Let it come." This was what Ouyang Shua said to Xie and the rest. It was time for the two alliances to have a head-on clash in the wilderness. Ouyang Shua's domineering attitude was undoubtedly very inspiring. The specific matters of the Bank of the Four Seas would be handled by Meng Jida. After the new year, Meng Jida also planned to invite the top talents of the financial circle in China to work in the Bank of the Four Seas. Modernizing operations and recruiting talents were the Bank of the Four Seas philosophy. Feng Qiuhuang and the rest also had the authority to recommend some financial talents to work in the Bank of the Four Seas. Ouyang Shua did not intend to completely control the Bank of the Four Seas. If he wanted to make the cake bigger, he had to have the heart to eat the cake. How could the current Ouyang Shua be compared to the cautious little lord who had just been reborn be compared to him? Around him, with him as the core, he had already formed a powerful alliance of interests. Whether it was historical talents like Shao He or the other lords, they were all pawns in Ouyang Shua's hands. At this point, Ouyang Shua had a slight understanding of his position. Only by binding the people he needed to his chariot and forming a common interest system, could he advance or retreat in the game against the Yan-Huang Alliance and other external forces. Each person, each force was like a chess piece on the chessboard. Only by uniting them could he calmly lay out his plans and charge forward in the battle. Because of this, Di Chun and the rest had to be careful when they wanted to deal with the Bank of the Four Seas. As soon as he returned, Ouyang Shua issued a decree to reward all the generals. Since the establishment of the military rank system, Ouyang Shua should have rewarded all the generals after the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom War. However, after the war, the army was reorganized and had no time to care about this matter. Just as the army was about to be reorganized, the Battle of Ma Bay came, which delayed it until now. Ouyang Shua wanted to make good on his promise before the new year. Among the generals, Bai Qi held the rank of general and was the number one general in the army. Behind him, Han Xian, Sun Bin, and Hua Tsubing all held the rank of general. Other than the 4 first-grade generals, there were 3 third-grade generals. The second-grade general position was temporarily vacant. The decree promoted Shi Wansui, the commander of the Dragon Stallion Army's 2nd Corps, to the Anxi General Zhang Han, the commander of the Leopard Army's 2nd Corps, to the Anxi General, and Di Qing, the commander of the Brave Tiger Army's 2nd Corps, to the Anong General. Of the 4 generals, only the Annan General position was temporarily vacant. Below that was a batch of 4th-grade generals. Under the imperial edict, he promoted Eli, Fan Lihua, Luo Shixin and Wei Zhang, 4 great generals who had rendered meritorious service, to be promoted to Eastern, Southern, Western and Northern 4 commanders. Mu Guiying, Chao Yu, Bailey Shi and the other generals were also promoted to 4th-grade generals. Below that was a batch of 5th-grade generals. Unsurprisingly, all the generals who held the position of division commander were promoted to 5th-grade generals. Even the 2 generals who had just joined the army, Zhao Bonu and Zhao Shi, were promoted. In addition to the rank of general, the military administration also evaluated and promoted the soldiers according to their contributions since the establishment of the territorial army. A large number of veterans received the highest rank that their positions could attain. In addition to the promotion, Ouyang Shua also ordered the entire army to receive an extra month's pay as a reward for their contributions to the territory. Even the surrendered soldiers of the Taiping army received the same treatment. In a short time, the morale of the army was greatly stabilized. Ouyang Shua's prestige in the army reached a new peak. Chapter 602. P.S. From tomorrow onwards we will return to our normal schedule, 12 a.m., 6 p.m. Apologies. It was New Year's Eve again. It was familiar, yet strange. The Nian Beast event was still a regular program, but Ouyang Shua was not interested in it. The red envelope snatching event reached a new peak. As expected, Xing Binger, the god-level lucky star, had a new reward. She drew a rare accessory, which made everyone envious. Star Moon Pendant, dark gold. Increase cultivation speed by 25, increase true origin energy density by 5. Even Ouyang Shua was a little jealous when he saw it. There was something different amidst the liveliness. The number of talents in Shanghai City was growing. As the Spring Festival approached, the civil and military officials began to return to Shanghai City. Firstly, it was to continue the tradition of Shanghai City and celebrate the Spring Festival with the Marquis. Secondly, it was for the Marquis' upcoming wedding. Since that was the case, there was no reason for them to come empty-handed. Other than Pei Ju, who was still stationed at the Withered Fortress, the other 7 county governors were all present. They brought the specialties of each county, such as the strange stones from Zhaoqing County and the sandalwood from Laizhou County. Ouyang Shua had already said that the officials could not compete with each other during the wedding, nor could they purposely search for rare treasures from the people to encourage extravagance. Governing the territory well was the best gift. After the banquet ended, the civil and military officials returned to their mansions to keep watch with their families. Ever since the release of The Rise of the Noble Families expansion pack, the wilderness had slowly changed. Most importantly, the families of historical figures had been quietly refreshed to their side. Now, Xiao He, Du Ruhui, Luo Shixin, and the other civil and military officials were no longer alone. There was a large family in their mansions. It was inevitable that Xiao He and the others would be involved in more conflicts of interest, be it actively or passively. At the same time, because of the existence of their families, these famous officials and military officials were more humane than before. The wilderness was becoming more and more real. Countless people, countless interests, were intertwined in Shanghai City. Even Ouyang Shuo, the Lord, gradually felt that while this magnificent city was becoming more and more prosperous, it was also becoming more and more unfamiliar. Some people say that when a person stands high enough, looking down from above, although he can see the canopy of the tree, everything under the canopy has already become blurred. Ouyang Shuo was currently standing at such a height, overlooking the entire territory while sitting on the defense of Royal City. Everywhere he looked, there was only prosperity. When he tried to see them clearly, he could only see blurry and unfamiliar faces. The ancients did not deceive them when they said that they were alone. According to the ancient customs, on the eve of the wedding, Song Jia would be brought to the Song residence to stay. She would only be able to see her on the day of the wedding. Only Bing and Qing accompanied Ouyang Shuo. Even Ying Yu had returned to her clan for the new year because the entire Chui clan had moved to Shanghai City. The southern border protectorate headquarters seemed to be bustling with activity, but Ouyang Shuo felt that it was abnormally cold and cheerless. In the end, it's still brother and sister? Ouyang Shuo leaned against the railing and gazed into the night sky by himself, and there was an indescribable loneliness in his eyes. At this moment, Ouyang Shuo suddenly felt a trace of fear. He was afraid of the passing of time. Time passed year after year. Ouyang Shuo grew older and older, but Bing grew older and older. He was truly fearful of the arrival of that day. When the little girl grew up and became a beautiful young lady, would she still be so dependent on her older brother? Perhaps when that time came, the only ones by Ouyang Shuo's side would be the ice-cold throne and the equally ice-cold scarlet knight sword. As if sensing Ouyang Shuo's thoughts, a thought suddenly entered Ouyang Shuo's mind. Ouyang Shuo was overjoyed. With a flash of black light, the sky demon's spear that had been sleeping for more than 3 months suddenly appeared in his hand. The sky demon's spear became even darker and more profound. Upon closer inspection, there was a mystical charm that tempted one to look at the spear. Ouyang Shuo immediately looked at the sky demon spear's attribute. Name: Sky Demon Spear, high-quality divine armament, hardness, 90, sharpness, 88, toughness, 75 characteristics, blood devouring, has a certain chance of devouring the enemy's blood essence to promote the evolution of the weapon, ultimate skill. Tyrant's blood infuses the demon god's domineering aura and attacks with all its might. With an overbearing momentum, it moves forward with an indomitable will. Those hit by it will die. Cooldown time, 1 month. Evaluation. Forged from extraterrestrial divine stones, nourished by the demon god's blood essence and the demon god's soul, it has mutated and become a divine weapon. Drip blood to recognize the owner. Cannot be traded, cannot be dropped, and can evolve again. After completely devouring and digesting the demon god's soul, the sky demon's spear had evolved again. Its 3-dimensional attributes had improved a lot. Not only that, but it had also derived a killer skill. Those hit by it will die. Looking at the description, it was extremely frightening. With 5 years of adventuring experience in his previous life, Ouyang Shuo was relatively calm about this. The so-called, those hit by it will die, was not absolute. As long as the other party was strong enough or had other means, they could escape. Otherwise, with just this move, Ouyang Shuo would be invincible in the world. In addition, the 1-month cooldown period was also a very troublesome existence. However, there was one point that attracted Ouyang Shuo's attention. This was the first time that Ouyang Shuo had seen a high-quality divine armament level description. Even the Scarlet Knight sword that was infused with the soul of the Scarlet Dragon didn't have such a description. From this, it could be seen that even among the divine armaments, the Sky Demon Spear was a top-notch existence. Long time no see, old friend. Ouyang Shua held the sky demon's spear and muttered to himself. Seeing this, waves of black light flashed on the surface of the sky demon's spear. Haha, good. Ouyang Shua seemed to understand and was in a good mood. Carrying the sky demon's spear, he walked into the courtyard and practiced the Yang family's spear technique. The bright moon hung high in the sky. The night was like water. In the pitch-black night sky, fireworks were everywhere, dazzling and dazzling. In Shanghai City, it was noisy. The sound of firecrackers could be heard, and people were talking. In the courtyard, it was silent. Ouyang Shua held the sky demon's spear and moved back and forth. From time to time, there was a rustling sound. In his hand, the sky demon's spear seemed to have a mind of its own. Unconsciously, the Yang family's spear technique, the 8 extremes fist, and the halberd technique that he had practiced in his previous life suddenly merged into one at this moment. There was no distinction between them, but Ouyang Shua seemed to be unaware of it. He continued to dance. The more he moved, the more rapid the rustling sound became. After an hour, Ouyang Shua stopped. He concentrated and stood alone. A trace of a smile flashed on the corner of his mouth. A series of system notifications sounded in Ouyang Shua's ears. System notification. Congratulations to player not have closed. You have entered the state of enlightenment and reached the realm of one with the spear. You have mastered all your martial arts and formed a unique spear technique. Please name the spear technique. Sky Demon Spear Technique. Ouyang Shua did not hesitate. This spear technique could only be used by the Sky Demon Spear. There was no doubt that the newly born Sky Demon Spear technique was a top-notch god-level technique. After advancing, Ouyang Shua's proficiency in the spear technique did not increase. Instead, it fell to the 4th stage, familiar realm. Just at this moment, another series of system notifications sounded. System notification. Congratulations to player not have closed. You have achieved great success in the spear technique. You have officially become a spear master. Reward: 2,000 achievement points, 50,000 reputation points. Unknowingly, Ouyang Shua's spear technique had improved greatly. Unfortunately, Ouyang Shua was not the first spear master in the wilderness. Otherwise, Shanghai City would have long obtained the title of home of the spear technique. A night of dancing fish and dragons. The lively New Year's Eve passed in the blink of an eye. On the first day of the new year, there was the Heaven Offering Ceremony. This year's Heaven Offering Ceremony of Shanghai City was even bigger, grander, and more complicated. It only came to an end in the afternoon. From the afternoon onwards, it was time for Ouyang Shua's wedding. The entire Shanghai City had long been decorated. Red lanterns symbolizing festivity were hung all over the streets and alleys. On the crisscrossing main roads, there was a bell tower or drum tower at every corner, and on every bell and drum tower, there was already a stage set up. The entire city's stage had been booked by the Protectorate of the Southern Border. The sounds of rehearsals could be heard intermittently from the various stages. It was extremely lively. All the people in the city were talking about this unprecedented wedding. Or rather, they were enjoying this carnival of the people. The road from the Song residence to Royal City had already been paved with red carpets, and the imperial guards were guarding on both sides of the red carpet. Not only that, the entire Shanghai City was tightly guarded by the City Guard Division and the Imperial Guard. The two major intelligence agencies, the Shanghai Guards and the Black Snake Guards, were also secretly guarding. Their goal was to ensure that there would be no disturbances at the wedding the next day. With the arrival of a happy event, the heavens were also on their side. Since yesterday, the sky had begun to clear up. The snow in the city began to slowly melt, forming small streams that flowed into the ditches on both sides of the road. By the afternoon of the first day of the new year, there was no longer a trace of white. The entire city was drowned in the festive red color. In the afternoon, the people who came to watch the wedding arrived one after another. The first to arrive were the allies of Shanghai City. by Hua Feng Qiuhuang, dragon-seeking acupoints, Xiesiun, sword Qi thunderous, and so on. The members who had just participated in the Alliance Conference gathered in Shanghai City again. Every one of them brought a big gift. The Lord of Lingxi City, by Hua, presents a string of top-grade agate pearls. The Lord of Dragon-Seeking Acupoints presents a string of East Sea pearls. The Master of Sword Qi Thunderous of the Rain Listening Tower presents a caddy of top-grade agarwood. The sound of the announcement was endless. Zisu, the manager of the Internal Affairs Department, had specially chosen a side hall to store the gift. Those who came on the first day were all people close to Oyangshu. The second day, which was the real auspicious day, was the real auspicious day. There was an endless stream of people who came to congratulate him. The most important one was the imperial court. The 4 imperial courts of Xianying, Luoyang, Dali, and Xuanzhou all sent special envoys to congratulate Marquis Lian Zhou's wedding. There was no one else other than Ouyang Shua who had such an honor. Dali and Xuanzhou had a close relationship with Shanghai City. Ouyang Shua's position as the southern border governor was jointly bestowed by the 2 imperial courts. As for Xianying and Luoyang, they had a different origin. In fact, it was the special envoys of these 2 imperial courts that made others envious. It was because the masters of these 2 royal cities were Emperor Qin and Emperor Wu of Han. It was extremely difficult to get their approval. The reason was that in Shanghai City, there were several important ministers and generals from the Qin and Han dynasties. Those who had a relationship with the Qin kingdom were Wei Yang, Bai Qi, Wei Ran, Zhang Han, Wei Zhang, Jing Jian, and Bailey Shi. Those who had a relationship with the Han dynasty were Xiao He, Han Xian, Hua Tsubing, Xiahou Ying, Hua Guang, and Zhao Bonan. The 2 groups together accounted for more than 1/3 of the historical talents of Shanghai City. The 2 groups were the mainstays of Shanghai City. Shun Buhai had already reported to Ouyang Shua that he had to be wary of these 2 groups to prevent them from forming an alliance. Otherwise, once the alliance was established, it would definitely cause trouble. Ouyang Shua could only wait and see what would happen. Other than the congratulatory gifts, the special envoys of the imperial court also brought a special gift. The 4 imperial courts jointly decreed that Song Jia, the wife of the Marquis of Lianzhou, would be conferred the title of first-rank madam. During the spring and autumn warring states period, the wives of the feudal lords were called madam. Their status was equivalent to that of the princess of later generations. Song Jia's title was equivalent to that of Ouyang Shua's Marquis of Lianzhou. Just this alone was worth a lot of gold. Ouyang Shua married Song Jia at a later age, not only because he wanted to give Song Jia an explanation, but also because he wanted to establish Song Jia's status in the territory and gain the support of the citizens. Song Jia's title far exceeded Ouyang Shua's expectations. Other than the special envoys of the imperial court, there was also a group of players who came to congratulate Song Jia. Among them, there were lords and leaders of guilds who were invited, and there were also commoner lords who came uninvited. They said that they came to congratulate Ouyang Shua, but their real purpose was to build a relationship with him. The popularity of the Bank of the Four Seas made Shanghai City the hottest place in the world. Especially for the commoner lords, they had automatically put themselves in the same camp as the Alliance of Mountains and Seas. Ouyang Shua's wedding was the best opportunity to get close to him. The gifts brought by these people with ulterior motives were naturally of great value. Ouyang Shua didn't refuse any of them. Speaking of which, the Bank of the Four Seas was able to absorb a large amount of deposits because of his identity as the spokesperson of the commoner players. In the game, commoner players made up the majority. Although they couldn't exchange large amounts of gold like the children of big families, it was still a considerable amount. In terms of total number, commoner players made up the majority. Depositing money into the Bank of the Four Seas was a very normal choice for them. Using the Bank of the Four Seas to expand Shanghai City's influence to all commoner lords was one of Ouyang Shua's goals. Other than these players, there were also some special existences. The most special ones were the Battle Wolves and Xiongba. Although the two of them didn't personally come to Shanghai City to congratulate Song Jia, they arranged for their trusted subordinates to bring gift. Everyone knew that the alliance of mountains and seas, and Yan Huang alliance, were mortal enemies. Under such circumstances, the actions of the Battle Wolves and Xiongba were too thought-provoking. Ouyang Shua, on the other hand, didn't care much about this. Chapter 603. Ouyang Shua was not surprised by Xiongba's congratulations. To this ambitious person, he did things according to his heart, so why would he care about what the outside world thought? The two of them could not be considered friends, and there was even hatred between them. However, they were the same kind of people, and they appreciated each other. Zhang Lang's congratulations were somewhat out of Ouyang Shua's expectations. It seemed that the words of the battle in Mabei had touched Zhang Lang. The crowd that had come to watch the ceremony filled Shanghai City to the point that not even a drop of water could trickle through. Reporters from all the major media outlets gathered in Shanghai City, fighting to report on this grand wedding. On this day, Shanghai City's teleportation portal was completely open to the public. Of course, the necessary identity checks were still very necessary. Even if some people with ulterior motives wanted to use this opportunity to hide in Shanghai City, they would not be able to escape the tracking of the Shanghai Guards and Black Snake Guard. The two major intelligence agencies, with the support of a huge amount of funds, were abnormally terrifying. The number of spies increased exponentially, and there were thousands of them. It would be extremely difficult for anyone to escape their eyes. On this day, the full picture of Shanghai City was presented to the players of the China server. On the forums, there were rumors that Shanghai City was so prosperous that it was almost comparable to the royal city. In the eyes of the players, this was just not called me without clothes flattering himself. How could a player's city catch up to the royal city in a short 2 years? No one would believe it. Only when they saw it for themselves did they know that it was true. No words could describe the shock in the players' hearts. One could imagine what kind of uproar it would cause when the full picture of Shanghai City was spread throughout the China server through all the major media outlet. The image of Shanghai City in the hearts of the players would rise once again. For the newly opened Bank of the Four Seas, this was also a great piece of news. And this was one of Ouyang Shua's intentions. The current Shanghai City no longer needed to be hidden, and it could be presented to the world openly. This was the decisive change brought about by the difference in foundation. Ouyang Shua himself had no time to care about the excitement of the players. He was tormented by the ceremonial officer. He was like a marionette guided through the procedures one by one, and it was dazzling. The bride fainted. In the evening, the wedding of the century reached its climax. All the red lanterns in the city were lit, making Shanghai City look like a city that never sleeps. The stage in the Bell and Drum Tower was officially performing various operas. The people in the city adhered to the principle of proximity, surrounding the building and enjoying the opera feast. Fireworks rose from all parts of the city and exploded in the night sky. Countless children walked out of their homes and onto the street. They looked up and clapped as they watched the fireworks. The royal city was even livelier. Just for the banquet, there were more than 200 tables. 18 tables were set up in the Marquis' mansion, and the most important guests were seated there. As the groom, Ouyang Shua naturally had to propose a toast. 18 tables, table by table, Ouyang Shua's head was already spinning. After all, after the system update, in order to pursue realism, Gaia would also make players drunk when they drank. Only when night fell did Ouyang Shua return to his bedroom with the help of someone. Song Ba and the palace and Shudo. Xiao Ongba, who had to say. There was another ceremony in the palace. The commotion lasted for half an hour before the bystanders took their leave, leaving the two newcomers alone. As for making a scene in the bridal chamber? With Ouyang Shua's current status, who would have the guts? A warm red bed, a night of sex. Author, there should be 3,000 words here. Ouyang Shua slowly woke up when the sun was high up in the sky. Even with Ouyang Shua's strong physique, after getting drunk, coupled with the continuous plowing during the night, he was still exhausted. Song Jia had already woken up and was washing up. You're awake. Song Jia turned. Ouyang Shua nodded and prepared to get up. Song Jia called Zi Su into the palace to help Ouyang Shua change and wash up. Ouyang Shua, who had just woken up, was half naked. His strong muscles exuded a strong masculine aura. Zi Su was a virgin after all. Seeing such a scene, she could not help but feel shy. Fortunately, she knew that after the marriage, she would be the one to serve the marquis. She forced herself to calm down. Ouyang Shua was indifferent to this. In the past, he was not used to being served. But after 2 years, he was used to it. If not for Zi Su, he would not even be able to dress. As a marquis, Ouyang Shua had countless clothes. What to wear and what to wear were all arranged by Zi Su. If Ouyang Shua were to do it, he would not even know where to put his clothes. The guests from yesterday had mostly left. The side hall that was used to store gifts was filled to the brim. The entire Shanghai city was back on track. The wedding was like a wave in the river of time, passing in the blink of an eye. The only change was that the popularity of the people in the territory increased by another 3 points. After the wedding, Ouyang Shua had no time to rest. It was not easy for the officials to rush back to Shanghai City, so they could not leave in a hurry after the wedding. Using this chance, he naturally had to report his work to Ouyang Shua, the ruler. Apart from that, they also had to maintain relations with the 4 major divisions. In just a few days, the Bank of the Four Seas had collected more than 30 million gold coins. Shanghai City could naturally use this amount of money to borrow a part of the loan. With Shanghai City's financial health, it would not be a problem for them to get a loan of more than 5 million. With such a sum of money, the budget made by the General Administration of Finance at the end of last year had to be adjusted. How to lean towards the counties in the new budget was a big problem. Because of this, the county governors did not dare to neglect the officials of the 4 major divisions. The Protectorate Office now had a trace of the Imperial Court. The officials of the Protectorate Office were truly officials of the capital and had a respected status. With the adjustment of the territory, the concept of the region and the Imperial Court became clearer. Fan Li, the head of the finance department, became a powerful figure. The county governors were not fools. They knew that the one who truly controlled the budget was the marquis. Therefore, in the report they racked their brains and described their grand development plan with great ambition. Ouyang Shua's attitude was still mainly supportive. The territory was resting for the first half of the year, so it was the best opportunity to develop the internal affairs. Ouyang Shua was worried that the county governors did not have the heart to expand. In the following week, Ouyang Shua was busy with government affairs. Song Jia was conferred the title of Madam and officially stepped onto the political stage of the territory. Usually, Ouyang Shua would let Song Jia handle the government affairs such as attending the banquets of the Chamber of Commerce, attending the opening of shops, and attending activities that were close to the people. As the daughter of an aristocratic family, Song Jia handled these affairs with ease. In a short week, the image of the Marquis Madam was established in Shanghai City. Ouyang Shua was naturally happy to see this happen. Taking this opportunity, Ouyang Shua also made some adjustments to the status of the 3 sisters, Yingyu, Qing'er and Bing. He officially appointed them as the first princess and established their unique status in the territory. Cui Yingyu was appointed as the first princess of Yingyu, Mu Qingxi was appointed as the first princess of Qingyang, and Ouyang Bing was appointed as the first princess of Shuiyu. The title of princess was equivalent to that of a rank 2 princess. Other than the title of princess, there was also the corresponding land. Needless to say, the entire Cheongjo County was Bing Er's land. Tian Wenjing, the county governor of Cheongjo County, returned to Shanghai City this time to pay a visit to Ouyang Shuo and Bing Er the young master. Bing Er was still young, so she didn't have to worry about government affairs. Tian Wenjing was also very attentive. This time, when he came to the capital, he specially brought a large number of playthings, including some young spirit beasts for Bing Er to play with. When the little girl saw this, she was naturally very happy. Yu's land was chosen to be the Yen Luo Prefecture in Laizhou County. Qing Er's land was chosen to be the Shuaitai Prefecture in Zhaoqing County. 20% of the taxes of the two prefectures would be used for their daily expenses. For Yu, the title of princess was undoubtedly a powerful protective talisman in the officialdom. From now on, whether it was in the officialdom or among the common people, the rumors about Yu would completely die down. One should know that it was a first-rate crime to talk about the daughter of a noble. Wei Yang, who was in charge of the Ministry of Internal Affairs, had gradually made the people aware of the existence of the law. The laws of the territory had also entered the final revision period. After the Lantern Festival, the laws of the territory would be officially promulgated and implemented. For the little money grubber Qing Er with the land, she no longer had to worry about money, so she could focus on her tailoring skills. Even her clothing factory was packaged and sold to the Chui Family Chamber of Commerce for a price of 150,000 gold coins. As for the shares in Sangha Restaurant, the two sisters had long withdrawn and handed over the entire restaurant to Gu Sanyang to manage. Naturally, Gu Sanyang was very grateful for this. One should know that with the prosperity of Shanghai City, as the territory's first restaurant, the current Sangha Restaurant was in existence that made money every day. Gu Sanyang no longer needed to cook personally and focused on being the boss. It was rumored that Gu Sanyang already had the intention to find another husband and start a new family. Situations like Gu Sanyang's were not uncommon in the territory. When the refugees in the wilderness settled down and lived a prosperous life, they would start a new family and live a good life. It was precisely because of this that they were deeply grateful to their lord, Ouyang Shuo. To the refugees, Ouyang Shuo was no different from their second parent. In addition to the land, the construction division would also build a princess's residence in Shanghai City. Yu and Qing Er were already adults. After the Lantern Festival, they would move out of the protectorate manor and live in their respective princesses' residences. In this way, it would also eliminate the concerns of those with ulterior motives in the territory. Before this, when Yu and Qing Er lived in the Marquis's residence, it was inevitable that people would think that the Marquis was using the excuse of taking in a sworn sister as an excuse to hide a mistress. It would inevitably tarnish the reputation of Yu and Qing Er. With the establishment of the princess's residence, all the rumors would be dispelled. As for Bing Er, she was temporarily underage and would still live in the protectorate manor. Chapter 604. As soon as the decree was issued, it caused waves in the territory. There were people who were envious and jealous, and there were people who cheered excitedly. The loudest cheers were none other than the Chui clan. The acquisition of Qing Er's clothing factory was already a huge profit in the business. Yu's conferment even caused the Chui clan to transform into a relative of the imperial family. The Chui clan's merchant group was truly worthy of its name. For the civil and military officials of the territory, the successive conferment of 3 princesses represented the prosperity of the Marquis clan. It was a great atmosphere of prosperity for the territory. Naturally, they were happy from the bottom of their hearts. However, some commoners didn't think so. As Ouyang Shuo's sister, Bing Er was the little princess of the territory. Naturally, no one would gossip about her conferment as the first princess of Shuiyu. However, it was different for Yu and Qing Er, his 2 sworn sisters. Everyone in the territory knew that Yu and Qing Er were like other citizens. They were born as refugees. Marquis Jun treated them as his sworn sisters and accepted them into his mansion. Thus, there were already people who were jealous and gossiped about them in secret. Now, the two of them had advanced a step and were confirmed as princesses. It was equivalent to reaching the sky in a single bound. Jealousy was inevitable. However, the two of them had already become nobles and they couldn't casually comment on them. Even Qing'er herself was a little uneasy when she was first conferred. It was Ouyang Shua's words that made the two sisters feel at ease and accept it calmly. For Ouyang Shua, conferring princesses was first for the needs of the territory and second for his personal feelings. In the eyes of others, Qing'er had climbed up a high branch. But who knew how much help and comfort the two sisters had brought to Ouyang Shua? So what if there were some rumors? The Spring Festival in Shanghai City was really lively. On the 12th of February, which was the 10th day of the first month, a huge stone tablet was erected in the square of King City. The stone tablet was 9 meters high, 5 meters wide and 1 meter thick. It stood in the middle of the square with a magnificent momentum. Both sides of the stone tablet were densely engraved with tens of thousands of simple and unadorned small seal characters. The words "Territory Code" were even more eye-catching. Led by Wei Yang, the head of the Internal Affairs Bureau, the law school, and experts from the real world, the Territory Code, which took several months to compile with dozens of additions and deletions, was finally approved and officially finalized. This stone tablet was none other than the Codex tablet. The moment the Codex stele was unveiled, it meant that the territory had officially entered the Codex era. More than 10,000 copies of the Territory Code had already been printed. According to the deployment of the Ministry of Internal Affairs, all territorial government offices, prefectures, counties, towns, and even villages must be equipped with at least 2 copies of the Territorial Code. The heads of all levels of the Internal Affairs Division had one each. The prefectural government schools had to teach the Territory Code. According to Wei Yang's original words, he wanted the people of the territory to understand the Territory Code within 3 months, follow the Territory Code, and respect the Territory Code. Within half a year, the concept of the law of generals was deeply ingrained in the hearts of the people. In addition, in order to accurately interpret the essence of the Territory Code, the Law School of Southwest University China would also set up a special class to study the Territory Code. The students of the first batch were the heads of the Internal Affairs Division. All in all, in order to fully implement the Territory Code in the territory, Wei Yang had formulated a complete set of supporting measures. It was definitely not an impromptu decision. He was the most successful reformer in history, and he had a lot of experience in implementing laws. The Spring Festival outside the territory was not peaceful either. First, the exposure of Shanghai City's true colors caused a huge uproar in the forum. Ouyang Shua's popularity skyrocketed. Only then did the players truly understand what it meant to have a foundation. The world's #1 lord was truly worthy of his name. On the 5th day of the first month, Huitong Bank set up branches in the 9 Great Bank. Huitong Bank's deposit interest rate was exactly the same as the Bank of the Four Seas. Even so, for Huitong Bank, it was already an improvement from the original foundation. The foundation of the Bank of the Four Seas was not something that Huitong Bank could easily shake. As for raising the deposit interest rate, Lord Chunshan and the rest wanted to, but they were powerless. No one was a fool. The purpose of a bank was to make a profit. Once the deposit interest rate was raised again, they would be making a loss. Even so, Huitong Bank could not be underestimated. As for how to run a bank, the talents and resources of the great families were enough to beat the alliance of Shanghai. With Lord Chuanshan's interference, the Bank of the Four Seas held a large-scale recruitment fair after the new year. At the very least, it was not as successful as Meng Zhida had envisioned. One had to know that the top talents in the bank were almost all members of the system. Di Chen and the rest had control over this group of people, and Ouyang Shua could not shake them. Helpless, Meng Jida could only settle for the next best thing. In addition, in order to attract customers, Huitong Bank also used their marketing methods in real life and copied them into the game. For example, small gifts when opening an account. After a few days, Huitong Bank had stabilized its position and was competing with the Bank of the Four Seas. If it was not for the sudden exposure of Shanghai City, they might have really been tricked by Huitong Bank. Other than attracting small investors, Huitong Bank also learned from the Bank of the Four Seas and targeted their core customers at the guild. As expected, 3 of the top 10 guilds, Crisscrossing Sword Chi, 18 Steeds of Swallow and Cloud, and Embroidered Uniform Guard, all invested in Huitong Bank. Other than that, a total of more than 20 large guilds in the 9 great royal cities invested in Huitong Bank. Subsequently, the number of guilds that applied to invest in Huitong Bank reached 30 to 40. It was reported that this time, the 6 great families came together, and even the elders of their families were involved. They used up all their connections and emotions to create such a stir. Huitong Bank was very aggressive this time. Ouyang Shua didn't fall into disorder when facing this. He instructed Meng Jida to not change 3 things. That was, the development strategy of the bank would not change, the high standard conditions for equity participation would not change, and the strict conditions for lending would not change. The battle between the 2 banks was destined to be a long one. If they were led by the nose by Huitong Bank, they would easily fall into a disadvantage. In terms of innate conditions, the Bank of the Four Seas was superior to Huitong Bank. As long as they fought steadily, they would not lose. What they were afraid of was that they would be too impatient and do something that would benefit them in the short term. Ouyang Shua wanted to fight steadily, but someone was not willing to give up. After the new year, a conspiracy against the Bank of the Four Seas had already been secretly set up. Once it succeeded, it would be enough to push the Bank of the Four Seas into an abyss of no return. The 14th of February was the 12th of January. After leaving Shanghai City for a month and a half, the Nanyang Navy's Commander-in-Chief, Zheng He, finally returned. This time, Zheng He inspected the 3 fleets' bases and did a thorough investigation of the Nanyang Navy. The moment he returned, Zheng He submitted a plan for the expansion of the Nanyang Navy to Ouyang Shua. According to Zheng He's plan, the 3 fleets under the Nanyang Navy had to be at full strength in 3 years in Gaia. If not, we won't be able to dominate the oceans, Zheng He said. Other than that, Zheng He also proposed practical and detailed reforms to the fleet's warship allocation, command system, formation methods, and other aspects. Zheng He, who had sailed the Western Ocean 7 times, was an expert in this area. Needless to say, Shanghai City's shipbuilding and firearms technology came from the Ming dynasty. To Zheng He, seeing the 3 fleets was like seeing his own fleet. There was no sense of unfamiliarity. Therefore, Ouyang Shua accepted all of Zheng He's reform suggestions. At the same time, he authorized Zheng He to carry out a drastic reform of the Nanyang Navy, allowing the Navy to rise from the ashes. At the same time, he instructed the military office to fully cooperate with Zheng He's reorganization plan. As for the expansion of the fleet, Ouyang Shua was the one who had doubts. He did not feel that the fleet was expanding too quickly. After all, Zheng He had given him 3 years for Gaia. What Ouyang Shua was worried about was where to find such a number of high-level sailors, navigators, and captains. Shanghai City could not nurture such people in a short period of time. Other than that, Ouyang Shua had another worry. Since the establishment of the 3 fleets, there had not been a commander. If they really wanted to achieve full strength, they would have to recruit powerful naval generals. Where could he find one in such a short period of time? Ouyang Shua only hoped that he would gain something in the future 6th battle. Zheng He had helped him solve one of the biggest problems. Reporting to Marquis, I will make a trip to Quanzhou tomorrow morning to recruit relevant naval talents. Ouyang Shuo was stunned. I have some connections in Chuanzhou. Zheng He explained. I see. Ouyang Shuo was enlightened. How could he forget that in history, Chuanzhou was the most important transit station and departure point for Zheng He's voyages. In Chuanzhou, Zheng He had extraordinary influence. Especially in the fields of sailors and navigators, Zheng He was a godlike existence. Once Zheng He appeared in Chuanzhou, Ouyang Shuo could imagine how excited those people would be. Previously, the Military Affairs Office had been unable to recruit high-level talents no matter how hard they tried. Now, they would probably fight to come to Shanghai City. Ouyang Shuo could not help but feel vexed. How could he forget about this? If that's the case, thank you, General. Feel free to tell me if you need anything. Ouyang Shuo said. I have no other requests. Zheng He was also confident. Ouyang Shuo nodded and took out an item from his chest. It was the complete North Bay treasure map after fusion. He handed the treasure map to Zheng He and said, Take a look at this. Zheng He took a look and found it somewhat familiar. As the commander of 7 voyages, Zheng He was no stranger to the North Bay. In addition to this month of patrol, he had a clear understanding of the ocean in the game. The first person Zheng He thought of was Annan. To obtain the treasure, conflict was inevitable. Marquis, what do you mean? Zheng He asked uncertainly. I hope that I can obtain this treasure before the Great Voyage Plan is implemented. Just take it as an opportunity for the fleet to train in actual combat. How about it? Ouyang Shuo said. I will not let you down, Zheng He replied solemnly. Chapter 605. Gaia Year 3, February 25, Beihai Port. After 10 days of preparation, the fleet that was going to search for the treasures of Beihai Bay was finally ready to set sail. The expedition was led by Navy Governor Zheng He. Each of the 3 fleets would send a team to participate in the battle, forming the Alliance Fleet. The Allied fleet consisted of more than 300 warships, including 20 large towering ships and 150 cannons. There were a total of 36,000 officers and soldiers participating in the battle, and 38,000 sailors and other support personnel. The Commander-in-Chief of the Cliff Mountain Fleet, Kai Mao, the Commander-in-Chief of the Beihai Bay Fleet, and the Commander-in-Chief of the Jiaozhou Fleet, Smoke Demon, were all dispatched. The 3 generals had to thank Zheng He for this expedition. Zheng He's recruitment mission to Chuanzhou was unusually smooth, even exceeding expectations. In just 3 days, Zheng He brought more than 200 experienced navigators and more than 2,000 high-level sailors from Chuanzhou. In addition, Zheng He also recruited a group of Navy generals, including 5 high-ranking generals, 18 mid-ranking generals, and 45 low-ranking generals. In an instant, the quality of the Nanyang Navy's generals was improved by 2 levels. That was not all. After bringing the people back and settling them down, Zheng He set off again to Jianye to carry out a similar recruitment mission. Although it was not as fruitful as the one in Chuanzhou, it was still fruitful. Zheng He's 2 missions had undoubtedly laid a solid foundation for the expansion of the Nanyang Navy. Next, as long as ordinary sailors and soldiers were recruited and trained, the 3 fleets would be at full strength. A conservative estimate would be that it would take half a year. Zheng He's name spread like wildfire, establishing the authority of the Commander-in-Chief of the Nanyang Navy. At the Beihai Bay dock, Dragon Head was like a king, standing out among the other warships. Considering the practical needs, Ouyang Shuo had already handed over his flagship, Dragon Head, to Zheng He to use as the flagship of the Nanyang Navy. As for Ouyang Shuo, he was no longer assigned a specialized flagship. After the cannons were modified, Dragon Head could be said to be one of the most powerful warships in ancient China. The entire ship was equipped with 20 cannons, as well as all kinds of firearms such as flintlocks and rockets. It could be said that apart from the future ironclad warships, Dragon Head was the strongest warship on the sea. The cost of modification alone was more than 50,000 gold coins. If the dragon head was auctioned, it would probably fetch a sky-high price. Ouyang Shuo would accompany the fleet on this expedition because it might involve disputes between countries, so he could make decisions at any time. Of course, Ouyang Shuo wouldn't interfere with the specific command of the battle. It was up to Zheng He to decide. At 9 o'clock in the morning, after paying respects to Mazu, the fleet immediately left the port. Taking advantage of the winter monsoon, the fleet rode the wind and waves all the way to the nameless island marked on the treasure map. The entire North Bay had long since been cleansed by the North Bay Fleet. Not a single pirate organization dared to enter the North Bay. Otherwise, they would be mercilessly attacked by the fleet. Affected by this, the northern coast of Annan had been calm recently, and there were no more pirate attacks. The location marked on the treasure map is located in the sea between Anhai County and Rongping County, less than 100 nautical miles from the Annan coastline. To the north of the two counties was Hanoi, the only capital of the Annan district. When the fleet approached the coast of Annan, the first thing they encountered was the fishing boats of Annan. To these fishermen, they had not seen the pirates for several months, so they were naturally defenseless. Seeing such a huge fleet, they couldn't help but be shocked and dodged to the side. The fleet ignored the fishing boats and continued to approach. Finally, about 150 nautical miles away from the coastline, they encountered the enemy's navy fleet. Nearly half of the border of the Annan district was the coastline. Therefore, there were an unusually large number of player lords who built cities near the sea. They were scattered all over the long coastline. For these lords, the coastal waters were also a part of their territory. Therefore, more or less, they would set up a navy to patrol the surrounding sea and protect the safety of the fishermen. Previously, these navy had also met the North Bay Fleet. However, Pei Donglai strictly followed Ouyang Shuo's instructions and did not take the initiative to provoke trouble. The two sides were in harmony. This time, the situation was obviously very different. In order to find the treasure, the joint fleet must approach the sea of these territories. For the lords, this was undoubtedly a provocation. The Lord flag of Shanghai City, the Golden Dragon flag, and the Sea Dragon flag of the Shanghai City Navy were not unfamiliar to the Navy of Annan. As soon as the joint fleet approached, the Navy on the opposite side began to wave the flag signal. The general idea was that if they went any further, they would enter their territory and without permission, they were not allowed to enter. Marquis. On the Dragon Head, Zheng He asked Ouyang Shuo for instructions. Tell them that we didn't mean to offend them. We're just passing by to do a mission. Once the mission is completed, we'll leave immediately. Ouyang Shuo's original intention was to find the treasure. As for the war between nations, it was better not to provoke it if possible. Yes. After receiving the reply, Zheng He immediately ordered the flag bearers to wave the flag signal. Unfortunately, Ouyang Shuo's goodwill was obviously not trustworthy in the eyes of the other side. Even Ouyang Shuo, who didn't understand flag signal, could feel the determination in the other side's flag signal. What did they say? Ouyang Shuo's tone was somewhat gloomy. Reporting to the Marquis, the other side still insists that we are not allowed to enter without permission. Their attitude is extremely unyielding, Zheng He replied. Ouyang Shuo shook his head and slightly smiled. They refuse a toast only to drink a forfeit. Since that's the case, we'll directly attack and sink any ship in front of the fleet as punishment. Marquis, this. Zheng He was somewhat hesitant. In history, the main purpose of Zheng He's 7 voyages to the west was not the so-called ocean trade, nor was it the colonization that the West was good at. Instead, it was to make the small nations rush to the capital to pay their respects to the Ming Emperor in the name of the Celestial Empire. The purpose was to create a scene of 10,000 nations coming to pay homage to the Emperor. Every time he went to the West, it was a heavy burden on the national treasury. Sending out large amounts of gold, silver, and jewels was only exchanged for the courtesy of some small nations. His actions could be said to be a loss. After Ming Qingzhu passed away, Ming Renzong immediately called a halt to his voyages to the west. Precisely because of this, in Zheng He's philosophy, peace was the most important thing. Among his 7 voyages to the west, other than fighting pirates, there were probably no more than 5 recorded battles. Therefore, Zheng He was somewhat unaccustomed to Ouyang Shua's straightforwardness. Ming Qingzhu was wealthy and ambitious, so Ouyang Shua couldn't comment on it. But he was different. He was a pragmatist through and through. In order to achieve his goal, he didn't hesitate to bathe the world in blood. Moreover, this was a game, a wilderness destined to be filled with the flames of war. There was a huge difference from history. War was the theme of the wilderness to begin with. The war in the game was just one of Gaia's war settings. It was only to increase the game's playability. In the Federation in reality, the global governments had long merged into one. There was no such thing as a regional nation. General, Ouyang Shu looked straight at Zheng He and said solemnly, "General, please remember this. This is the wilderness. There is no distinction between justice and injustice in war. There is only the law of the jungle, the survival of the fittest." Zheng He's face froze as he barely replied, "As the Marquis commands." When Ouyang Shua saw this, he did not say another word. To change a person's worldview and values was a gradual process. The search for the treasure was also a trial for Zheng He by Ouyang Shua. The future voyages would probably be more bloody and cruel than today's war. Zheng He had to make changes. If not, how could a good man, an envoy of peace, lead the strongest navy in the territory and realize Ouyang Shua's ambition of dominating the seas? Fire! Zheng He turned around and gave the order. "Yes, sir." With the military order, the cannons roared. Boom! Boom! The first round of cannons made Ouyang Shua frown. This was the first time the Nanyang Navy used cannons in a real battle, but the effect was shameful. First of all, it was a mess. Over 100 cannons, there was no proper arrangement of firepower at all, and they were firing randomly. Some places were densely packed with shelling, while some places were calm and tranquil. Secondly, the accuracy of the cannons was frighteningly low. The cannoneers obviously did not understand the parameters of the cannons. Some cannons fired before they reached the firing range, and naturally hit the sea. Some cannons did not aim well, and the cannons exploded on both sides of the enemy's ship. Therefore, the first round of cannons looked very imposing and scared the navy so much that their faces turned pale. However, the actual damage was less than a dozen enemy ships that were hit. Seeing this, Zheng He's face was full of shame. "General, you don't have to be like this. It's not your fault." Ouyang Shua comforted him. Indeed, Zheng He had been running around since he joined Shanghai City, and he was still at the stage of understanding the Navy. He did not have the time to really train the Navy. The current fleet was only trained by the 3 commanders-in-chief. "Don't worry, Marquis. Within half a month, this situation will definitely change." Even so, Zheng He still made a military pledge in front of the Marquis. As the commander-in-chief of the Nanyang Navy, the fleet's poor performance made Zheng He feel ashamed. "Then I'll wait and see." Ouyang Shua smiled slightly. As the two talked and laughed, the second round of cannons began. With the previous example, the effect of this round was somewhat unsatisfactory. A total of 20 enemy ships were hit. After 2 rounds of cannons, the enemy's navy was almost paralyzed. Facing the sudden cannons, the enemy was obviously not prepared at all. They were directly hit and even forgot the basic counterattack. At this moment, a system notification sounded in Ouyang Shua's ears. System notification. Player not saying that has no clothes led troops to annihilate a Navy fleet in the Annan District, triggering a national war. The Annan District has officially entered national war mode. Players, please be prepared. Chapter 606. All the players in the Annan District suddenly received a system announcement. System announcement. The Lord of China has initiated a national war. The Annan District has entered the national war mode. King City River has entered the second level of alert. Please check the specific situation yourself. As soon as the announcement came out, the whole country was in an uproar. For the players in the Annan District, this national war came too suddenly. According to the information disclosed by Gaia on the official website, there were two main points in the national war mode. First, the merit point setting. The two sides of the national war would kill each other, and there would be merit points as a reward, just like in the battle map. Unlike the battle map, there was no setting for the battle contribution points in the wilderness. Killing an ordinary soldier of the enemy country would directly get 1 merit point as a reward. Rich merit points were one of the main motivations for the future Lord to launch a national war. Second, the rules for determining the outcome. The national war was divided into a full-scale war and a local war. The basis of the difference between the two was whether the king city was captured or not. Simply put, as long as the two countries were at war, it would trigger a local war. But once the war spread to the king city, or the king city's army took the initiative to participate in the war, it would immediately turn into a full-scale war. The outcome of the two wars was also different. For a local war, it had nothing to do with the overall outcome, but entirely depended on the battle situation at that time. But for a full-scale war, the outcome must end with one side completely annihilating the other side. Therefore, a full-scale war was almost equivalent to a war to destroy a country. The system announcement in the Annan District mentioned that King City River had entered the second level of alert, which meant that this national war was just a local war. If it was a full-scale war, then the king city would be in the highest level of alert. In addition, for a local war, whether the players participated in the war or not was entirely voluntary. And if it was a full-scale war, all the players on the attack side, whether they were adventure players or lord players, would be forced to participate in the war by the system. Therefore, it was very difficult to destroy a country. At the most tragic time, all the players in the country had to be eliminated before the war ended. In this regard, the China region had the advantage. The number of players in the China region basically guaranteed that there was no risk of the country being destroyed. The information of the national war disclosed by Gaia immediately caused an uproar in the Annan District. On the forum, there were endless requests for war. For the players, it was unbearable to be attacked at their doorstep. Needless to say, the one who started the war was merely a lord. Even though not wearing clothes was famous all over the world, it couldn't stop the enthusiasm of the Annan District players to join the battle. Although the area of Annan District was not large, its population density was extremely high, nearly twice that of China. There were more than 5 million players in the entire Annan District. Even if the old, weak, women, and children were excluded, it was still a terrifying number. Just the total number of adult adventurer players exceeded 2 million. It was a country that could not be underestimated. Excluding the lifestyle players, the total number of combat players was close to 1 million. So, how could they tolerate Shanghai City's provocation? Soon, the frontline battle report was revealed. This time, the attack came from the sea. Shanghai City had sent out a huge fleet, and they were ferociously charging over. All of a sudden, the feudal lords along the coast of Annan became restless. They issued a Level 1 war alert in their territories, and a large number of warships were activated, preparing to go out to sea for battle. The hot-blooded adventurer players didn't want to be left out, and they volunteered to take them on the warships of the lords. They were going to have a decisive battle with Shanghai City's army at sea. Some of the more impatient ones simply rented merchant ships and set sail just like that. For a time, thousands of sails raced along the coast of Annan District, which was quite spectacular. The drawback was that the technology tree of Annan District had neither the modern technology of the West nor the ancient shipbuilding heritage of China. Its strongest warship was not as good as the second-class warship of Shanghai City. Therefore, their only way to win was to rely on the tactic of overwhelming numbers. If the players of the Annan district had always been in such a chaotic state, then they were just scattered sand, which was not enough to pose any threat to the Shanghai City fleet. Fortunately, at the critical moment, someone stood up. He was the feudal lord of Haiphong City, Yuan Tianke, the leader of the Annan Northern Alliance. Yuan Tianke called on everyone to unite and coordinate, strive to annihilate the invading enemy in one fell swoop, and defend the honor of the country. As the top feudal lord of the Annan district, Yuan Tianke was undoubtedly very successful, and his appeal among the players was not trivial. Soon, hundreds of feudal lords along the coast united around Yuan Tianke. After some discussion, a huge allied fleet was quickly formed. However, the coastline of the northern Annan district was long, and it would take some time to integrate the fleet together. In desperation, in response to the strong appeal of adventurous players, Yuan Tianke could only order more than 20 feudal lords of Haiphong County and Rongping County as the vanguard to take the lead. Some players who could not wait had already gone to sea. North Bay on Dragon Head. The moment he received the system prompt, Ouyang Shuo was ready to fight a tough battle. Quickly clean up the battlefield and advance at full speed. Ouyang Shuo ordered. Understood. Zheng He also realized that there seemed to be a huge change in the battle. After hurriedly cleaning up the battlefield, Zheng He ordered the formations to release a large number of scarlet horse boat. Like casting a net, they laid it in the sea in front of them, in order to find traces of enemy ships and spy on the enemy. Soon, Zheng He's intuition was fulfilled. Not long after the fleet sailed, they encountered waves of enemy ships. The strange thing was that these enemy ships were very weak and scattered, without any sort of organization to speak of. Even some merchant ships and fishing boats were mixed among them. This is considered a navy? Zheng He was speechless. Just sink them. Yes, sir. Zheng He did not want to use precious cannons to deal with these small fries. After the modification, the fortress ships and the Taowu warships were all equipped with sharp iron tips that looked like beaks, and even more powerful iron collars. Ordinary small and medium-sized warships were directly cut in half by their collisions. Although the warships of the Annan district were not good, the players were very enthusiastic. Each warship carried a large number of adventurous players, ranging from hundreds to thousands. They were still thinking of having a hot battle with the fleet of Shanghai City. Hand-to-hand combat was a battle between men. When they saw the fortress ships that were several stories high, the horse-like Taowu warships, and the ghost-like scarlet horse boats, they realized how big the world was. In front of the fortress ships, their warships were just babies. They could already foresee the tragedy that was about to happen. Sure enough, under the collision, a large number of players fell into the sea like dumplings. Suddenly, countless black heads emerged from the calm sea, which was quite a spectacular scene. Zheng He did not even bother to waste arrows on these players who fell into the sea. Because once they fell into the sea, the chance of survival was close to zero, so there was no need to waste precious arrows. It should be noted that the number of arrows carried by the warships was limited by the load. Only the players who tried to climb into the sea and fight with the warships of Shanghai City would be shot. After all, among these adventurous players, there were still some with unique skills. Martial arts were not unique to the China region. Ouyang Shuo stood on the dragon head in silence, letting Zheng He command him. His merit points were rising at a speed visible to the naked eye. In just 2 battles, Ouyang Shuo had gained more than 20,000 merit points, which was really terrifying. Such a great harvest was also related to the characteristics of naval battles. After all, once a warship was sunk, almost all the soldiers would be wiped out. The casualty rate was unusually high. The 2 battles were just the prelude to the national war. In the port of Haiphong, a huge fleet had already assembled and was attacking the fleet of Shanghai City. Further away, on the coastline, tens of thousands of warships were gathering at the port of Haiphong. The headquarters of the Allied forces was located in Haiphong, which was also the base camp of Ruan Tianke. Apart from these two fleets, the fleet of Shanghai City was also sailing with increasing difficulty. The further they went, the more enemy warships appeared. The enthusiasm of the players of the Annan district shocked Ouyang Shua. The adventurous players were not real fools. The miserable experience of the first fleet made them quickly calm down. They realized that if they continued to rush forward in a disorderly manner, they would only be sending themselves to their deaths. Therefore, the following fleets of players were quickly divided into two camps. Some returned to the port of Haiphong and met up with the Allied fleets, while the others gathered together and marched forward again. When the fleet of Shanghai City once again encountered the enemy fleet, the spectacular scene stunned Jing He. He saw thousands of warships gathered on the vast sea. There were all kinds of warships covering the sea, and as far as the eye could see, there were all kinds of sails. Zheng He was not crazy to crash into the enemy fleet with only 300 warships of the Allied fleet. As the saying went, ants could bite an elephant to death. If they used the same tactic as before, the biggest possibility was not to sink the enemy ships, but to be drowned in the endless fleet of warships, never to come out again. Pass the order, fire all cannons. Zheng He ordered. Yes, sir. The familiar rumbling sound of cannons exploded on the sea again. Under the bombardment, the fleet of warships on the opposite side was immediately in chaos. The order of battle, which had been orderly just now, was immediately shot to the left and right. It was as if a basket of stones had suddenly been thrown into a calm lake. Even so, the fleet of warships still stood firm. Braving the cannons, they launched a fearless charge against the fleet of Shanghai City. Along with the horn to charge, a dense barrage of arrows poured down mercilessly toward the Shanghai City fleet. Because of the large number of people, the arrows even weaved a pitch-black arrow net in the air. The fleet of Shanghai City was facing a life-and-death test. Chapter 607. Concentrate all the cannons and blast open a channel in the middle of the enemy ships. Facing the crazy counterattack of the enemy fleet, Zheng He was calm and quickly came up with a solution. Under his order, the cannons fired in unison. What would happen if 150 cannons fired at the same time? Zheng He gave the answer. Under the bombardment of the cannons, the dense enemy fleet was split in half, as if it was cut in half by a god with a giant sword. In the middle of the dense fleet, an empty channel of more than 90 meters wide was suddenly cleared. Countless warship wreckage floated on the sea. Thousands of adventurer players were hit by shell fragments, seriously injured, and fell into the sea, wailing. Those who had not experienced such a scene could not feel this shock. The rain of arrows from the enemy fleet stopped. Zheng He, however, was not shocked at all. He continued to command, "The fleet will quickly pass through the middle in battle formation. Scatter the rockets to both sides and blow up the fleet on both sides." It was very difficult for warships to fire cannons when they were moving fast, especially this kind of heavy and outdated cannon. Its huge recoil was very likely to capsize the warship directly. Therefore, Zheng He could only settle for the next best thing. He used the light-fire arrows to counterattack and disrupt the enemy's formation. Yes, sir. Navy soldiers, get ready to fight at any time. Zheng He continued to order. Yes, sir. The Shanghai City fleet changed its formation, accelerated its speed, and rushed forward. Because it was a joint battle between the three fleets, the command and dispatch of the fleets was still a little uncoordinated. Fortunately, after a few stumbles, they finally completed the change of formation. The warships of the Annan district had been heavily damaged, but they did not completely lose their combat power. After all, the huge number of warships was there, and it was not easy to defeat them. The warships on both sides quickly moved toward the middle, trying to attack the Shanghai City fleet. The adventurer players on the ships were already anxious, shouting to avenge their brothers who had died in the battle. Of course, they first had to avoid the rocket attack. The current rockets were completely different from the rockets that had been soaked in fierce fire oil. The most representative was naturally the Fire Dragon out at sea, a multi-stage rocket. The range of 15 kilometers was enough to completely cover both sides of the enemy fleet. The enemy ships that were hit by the rockets suddenly burst into flames, and the dense crew members made the warships panic. Then this panic was transmitted to the surrounding warship. Therefore, the enemy fleet's charge could be said to be stumbling. Even so, a large number of small warships still managed to bite onto the Shanghai City warships like ants. At this time, it was time for the naval soldiers to appear. For the first time, the two sides started to fight. This allowed the Annan players to finally vent their anger. With red eyes, they fought with the Nanyang Navy. Artillery team, get ready. Zheng He ordered again. Hand-to-hand combat was not Zheng He's style. The firearms of the Ming dynasty were Zheng He's forte. Because of this, the Combat Readiness Division specially followed Zheng He's request and equipped the three fleets with all kinds of firearms. Originally, Ouyang Shua had placed these firearms on the list of eliminated weapons. Since it was Zheng He's request, Ouyang Shua naturally had no reason to stop him. With Shanghai City's current level of steelmaking, speeding up the production of a batch of firearms was really not a difficult matter. Who would have thought that this batch of firearms would be so powerful? With the support of the gunners, the Navy quickly stabilized their position. The enemy's casualties were getting higher and higher. When the Shanghai City fleet passed through the Central Channel, they left behind a sea of blood. After the breakthrough, Zheng He did not give up. Stop advancing and reorganize the battle formation. Yes, sir. The joint fleet slowly stopped and turned the cannons again. Fire. Without Zheng He's order, the three major fleets already knew what to do. The enemy fleet, which had been left behind, had not yet recovered from the heavy damage when another round of the Grim Reaper greeted them. Ouyang Shua did not expect that the seemingly difficult battle would be so easy under Zheng He's command. The enemy fleet was completely passive and could only take a beating. God-tier naval generals were indeed extraordinary. From the looks of it, Gaia must have strengthened Zheng He's military leadership skills. China's famous naval generals were really rare. If they did not strengthen them, they would not be able to fight. From this, it could be seen that the generals in the other regions should have similar enhancements. This way, Gaia could achieve the relative balance that had always been maintained. The next battle was an unequal fight. After a few rounds of bombardment, the menacing enemy fleet finally regained their senses. In the face of the harsh death penalty, they had no choice but to admit defeat and flee in all directions. In this battle alone, Ouyang Shua obtained more than 20,000 merit points. While the battlefield was being cleaned up, the Scarlet Horse boats finally brought the latest frontline military intelligence. Ouyang Shua frowned when he learned that Annan's regular naval fleet had set sail. In the previous battles, Shanghai City's fleet seemed to have won beautifully, but in fact, it was not without losses. Just the war resources alone had been depleted by 1/3. If this continued, Ouyang Shua was not sure if they could reach the nameless island smoothly. In the end, this national war was just a side mission. Finding the treasure was the most important. General, we have to change our strategy, Ouyang Shua said. Marquis, what do you mean? Zheng He was also a little worried. Ouyang Shua said, repair the plank road in the open and move in the dark. Split up? Zheng He understood immediately. That's right. Ouyang Shua nodded with a smile. General will lead the main fleet to deal with the enemy at sea and attract all their attention. I will personally lead an elite team to secretly go to the nameless island. Marquis Jun is wise. It's just one thing. It's not easy for General to restrain an entire nation's enemy fleet. Ouyang Shua expressed his concern. Please rest assured, Marquis. I have my plans. Zheng He was confident. In that case, I'll leave it to General. Ouyang Shua cupped his fists and agreed with Jing He on the rendezvous point. He was ready to disembark with his guard. Since it was a secret trip, they naturally couldn't take the Dragonhead warship. Even if it was another fortress ship, it wouldn't work. It was too eye-catching and would be recognized by Annan's players. Therefore, Ouyang Shua was ready to set sail on the Dragonhead warship. At this moment, Ouyang Shua turned his head and glanced at the opposite sea. Suddenly, a plan came to his mind. On the sea, the enemy's warships had already fled, leaving behind some wreckage. Apart from that, there were a few relatively intact warships that were abandoned on the surface of the sea. Men, Ouyang Shua said. Here. Arrange for people to collect 10 enemy warships and load them with resources. They will be our warships. Yes. Riding on the Annan's warship was the best disguise. The Annan's players would never think that there would be an accomplice sneaking into their hinterland. An hour later, everything was ready. Without verbose words, Ouyang Shua directly ordered to set sail. In addition to his guards, Zheng He arranged for the most elite captains, sailors, and naval officers to accompany him. The small fleet quietly sailed to the unknown sea. Zheng He led the joint fleet and took the initiative to head toward the Annan Alliance's fleet. His task was to firmly lock the eyes of the entire Annan Alliance on this fleet. The bustling sea gradually calmed down. Just as Ouyang Shua went to sea, a huge conspiracy was brewing. After the Lantern Festival, thousands of players went to the Chang, a branch of the Bank of the Four Seas, to deposit money every day. This group of players was not individual investors, but a unified action. They were mixed in the mighty depositing team and did not attract the attention of the bank. It was the same for 3 days in a row. Immediately afterward, the Chang, an evening news and other local media began to constantly expose. Almost every piece of news was negative about the Alliance of Mountains and Seas. The Alliance of Mountains and Seas obtained a large amount of low-interest loans from the Bank of the Four Seas, and more than 90% of them were used for the infrastructure construction of the territory. There was no profit at all, and there was a great risk of default. Shanghai City used the reserves of the Bank of the Four Seas without authorization, and the bank's treasury is actually an empty shell. The baleful blood mercenary group was forced to invest in the Bank of the Four Seas. It is reported that Bloody Romance has the intention to withdraw from the Bank of the Four Seas. Every piece of news was specious. It was like a rumor, but it was also like inside information. When such negative news increased, it naturally attracted the attention of the players. It was not just a saying that 3 people make a tiger. Ouyang Shua was not in Shanghai City, so he naturally did not know. Moreover, most of these negative news came from the Chang, an evening news and other local media, so Ouyang Shua could not pay attention to it. Not to mention Ouyang Shua, even Bai Hua and the others did not know anything. Only the Black Snake Guard's intelligence station in Chang intercepted such information and reported it to the Black Snake Guard headquarters. However, in the 3rd year of Gaia, the Black Snake Guard expanded again, and their tentacles extended further and further. More than 1,000 pieces of information were gathered to the headquarters every day. Such a piece of information without real evidence naturally did not attract the attention of the headquarters. It could even be said that before it was sent to the Black Snake Guard's desk, it was cut off and dealt with according to the rules. Chang'an was still a blank spot for the Alliance of Shanghai. The guilds that cooperated with the Bank of the Four Seas were not in Chang'an. Because of this, these negative news could quickly ferment and become more and more intense. Otherwise, the allies would have long known. Just when the players in Chang'an City were feeling a trace of distrust towards the Bank of the Four Seas, the group of players that had previously deposited money in the bank appeared again. This time, they did not come to deposit money, but to withdraw money. Since the opening of the Bank of the Four Seas Chang'an branch, many people had deposited money, but such a large-scale withdrawal was really rare. Such an abnormality naturally attracted the attention of other players. After a little inquiry, there was an uproar. Those players who came to withdraw money exaggerated the negative news that was exposed by the Chang'an Evening News. In the end, they solemnly vowed, "This kind of money house is too dangerous. It's better to withdraw it. This is our hard-earned money." "Yes, yes, yes," someone echoed. Chapter 608. It can't be right? The Bank of the Four Seas reputation is trustworthy. Some people didn't believe the rumors either. Who knows? There are many sanctimonious people out there. I'd rather believe it. Forget it. Let's withdraw the money first. Under the incitement of some people finally wavered and started to follow the crowd. The power of rumors was very effective in front of the people of the country. In history, because of the ridiculous rumors on the internet, there had been several panic-buying frenzy, which was the best proof. For a period of time, the number of people withdrawing money from the Bank of the Four Seas Chang'an branch exceeded the number of people depositing money. Even those who doubted the rumors chose to remain on the sidelines and stop depositing money. Such an abnormality naturally attracted the attention of the staff, who immediately reported it to the branch's manager. The Chang'an branch's manager was a high-level banking talent that Meng Jida had hired during the Chinese New Year. His name was Li Wei, and he had dealings with Meng Jida in real life. "There's no need to panic. Handle it normally for them," Li Wei instructed. "Yes, sir." The staff retreated. An undetectable light flashed in Li Wei's eyes. The bank's manager's authority was unquestionable in the bank. Just like that, under Li Wei's suppression, the Bank of the Four Seas headquarters knew nothing about this storm. In just 2 hours, the flow of people withdrawing money in front of the Chang'an branch became more and more intense. It looked like it was about to turn into a bank run. Slowly, the news of the Bank of the Four Seas run spread like wildfire throughout Chang'an City. The more it spread, the more ridiculous it became. At this point, there was no need for someone behind the scenes to fan the flames. The players, who loved to join in on the fun, naturally came up with one shocking rumor after another. "Did you hear? The Bank of the Four Seas is about to close down." "It can't be right? Why not? Go there and take a look. The streets are already packed with people withdrawing money." "Then I'll go as well." The rumors spread like a virus. The crowd, who originally wanted to watch the commotion, could no longer hold back and joined in when they saw so many people withdrawing money. At this point, the truth was no longer important. Everyone seemed to have lost their minds. The bank's entrance was so crowded that not even a drop of water could trickle through. At this time, Li Wei appeared unhurriedly and gave an official speech. Naturally, there was no effect at all. The bank's treasury was about to be emptied. According to the rules, the branch's treasury only kept a sum of emergency funds. Every once in a while, a large sum of money would be transferred to the treasury of Shanghai City. Such an arrangement was to ensure the safety of the bank's funds. Once the treasury was depleted, the consequences would be unimaginable. "Shopkeeper, why don't we inform the headquarters? Otherwise, it will be hard to clean up," the bank manager asked. "What are you panicking for? If we can't even handle such a small matter, how will the headquarters view our branch?" Li Wei's attitude was unyielding. "Instruct the front desk staff to slow down the processing speed." "Yes," the manager replied awkwardly. The manager knew very well that if he slowed down, it would be like drinking poison to quench his thirst. The most fundamental solution was to transfer a large amount of funds to the headquarters in order to alleviate the players' panic. Sure enough, someone came up with another trick. "Why are you dragging your feet? Are you out of money?" A young man who was withdrawing money suddenly shouted at the front desk staff, expressing his dissatisfaction. "I'm sorry, sir. Because there are too many people, please wait patiently," the staff replied. "What do you mean by too many people? You're obviously out of money. How long has it been? You're already out of money? I didn't believe it at first, but now I do. You must be using the reserves. The young man was unrelenting. This commotion naturally attracted the attention of the other players in the hall. When the others heard this, they became even more agitated. Everyone, calm down. The bank's treasury is very well stocked. Anyone who wants to withdraw money will definitely speed up the process. However, we have limited manpower, so please wait patiently. The manager came out to mediate. Words alone are no proof. With this commotion, the situation had already gone out of control. If it wasn't for the golden guards that Ouyang Shua had planned out, the situation would have been in chaos. Even so, they probably wouldn't be able to hold on for long. The Bank of the Four Seas Chang, and branch, was going out of control under a series of schemes. Shanghai City, Southern Border Protectorate Manor. I want to see Madam. The Black Snake Guards Commander, Black Snake, came to the back hall with a solemn expression. Commander Black Snake, what's the matter? After a while, Song Jiao walked in from the back hall. Her tone was filled with respect for Black Snake. After the two of them got married, Ouyang Shua handed the Black Snake Guards over to Song Jia. After all, he often went out and there were some things that he couldn't handle in time. Song Jia's identity was the most suitable. Madam, something happened at the Bank of the Four Seas Chang and branch, Black Snake reported. The crisis in Chang and City was getting more and more intense. The commander of the Black Snake Guards in Chang and finally realized that something was wrong and reported the situation to the headquarters in the form of an urgent letter. When Black Snake received the news, he realized that something was wrong and immediately went to find Song Jia. After hearing this, Song Jia didn't panic. She told Black Snake to leave first and paid attention to the situation. Use the power of the Chang and station to find out more, Song Jia ordered. Black Snake's eyes flashed with admiration when he heard this. As expected of the woman chosen by the Marquis, she does have the demeanor of a leader. Someone, Song Jia said. Here. Ask Manager Meng to come, Song Jia said gently. Yes. While waiting, Song Jia picked up her brush and wrote more than 10 urgent letters. The sender was a member of the board of the Bank of the Four Seas. After a while, Meng Jida rushed over. Although Song Jia was his daughter's classmate, Meng Jida didn't overstep his boundaries. Madam. Meng Jida bowed. Manager Meng, take a look at this. Song Jia handed the report that the Black Snake Guards had compiled to Meng Jida. Meng Jida's hands couldn't help but tremble when he saw it. I didn't use the right people. Please punish me, madam. Meng Jida's face was full of shame. As the manager of the Bank of the Four Seas, he actually received such important information from the Protectorate of the Southern Border. It could be imagined that something must have happened at the Chang'an branch. At the very least, it was a mistake. Let's put the matter aside for now. We'll discuss it when the Marquis returns. Song Jia didn't deny it and said gently, what I mean is, I'll have to trouble Manager Meng to bring the funds and personally head to Chang and to stabilize the situation. If possible, it would be best to investigate the ins and outs of this matter. Understood. Meng Jida's face was firm. As an experienced banker, Meng Jida knew very well how terrifying it would be once the bank run spread. At that time, even if he clarified the rumors, it wouldn't be able to stop the bank run. After Meng Jida left, Song Jia started to arrange the side hall to welcome the board members. After receiving Song Jia's urgent message, Bai Hua and the rest rushed over. However, there were many people in the board and they were all busy people. It wasn't easy to gather them all together. At 3 in the afternoon, everyone had arrived. The report that the Black Snake Guards had compiled was distributed to the members. Song Jia was tactful and knew that she couldn't completely replace Ouyang Shua. After introducing the report, she didn't act as the host, but asked Vice President Feng Qiuhuang to host the meeting. Feng Qiuhuang didn't pass on this responsibility. She and Song Jia seemed to be competing. In the end, it was hard to calm down. This is a conspiracy. The eternal conspiracy theorist, dragon-searching acupoint, was the first to speak. There's no need to say such an obvious thing. Feng Qiuhuang rolled her eyes at dragon-searching acupoint and looked around. Let's discuss how to solve the current crisis. I'll settle the accounts with Chang, an evening news regarding the rumors of baleful blood mercenary group. Bloody Romance didn't expect that someone would target him. His expression was cold. I think there's something fishy about this, Chang, an evening news, Bai Hua added. Then let's investigate who gave them the guts to play tricks with Shanghai Alliance. They're overestimating themselves. Feng Qiuhuang was still as domineering as ever. Of course we'll investigate. But the most important thing now is to refute the rumors. Otherwise, once the storm spreads, I'm worried that it will affect the other royal cities, Xiexiyun reminded. Let's find Bai Shaoxing. Feng Qiuhuang decided. There was nothing more effective than a detailed report on a specific topic. Bai Shaoxing was obviously an expert in this field, and the two of them had a basis for cooperation. As for the rumors of embezzlement, we can invite some players and media to visit Shanghai City's treasury to prove our innocence, Song Jia suggested. That's a good idea. Other than that, I'm afraid that we'll need real information to question the profits of each territory. How about this? Let's selectively reveal the development plans of each territory, Feng Qiuhuang said. No problem. Towards Chang, an evening news slander, Siege Lion and the others' faces darkened. What did they mean by being unable to repay the loan? Wasn't this a slap to their faces? Other than refuting the rumors, we also have to be wary of the other party's backup plan, Bai Hua said. Everyone had a guess in their hearts. The person who could do such a thing was most likely from Yanwang Alliance, and their goal was to attack the Bank of the Four Seas and raise Huitong Bank's status. But this method was a little underhanded. If there's a cash flow problem, Snow Rose can urgently mobilize 1 million gold coins, Xiexiyun took the lead. Baleful Blood Mercenary Group can also mobilize 1 million gold coins. If there's a need, just say the word. This conspiracy had deepened Bloody Romance's recognition of Shanghai Alliance. Seeing this, Bai Hua and the others nodded in satisfaction. The leaders of the other guilds also expressed their opinions. The Bank of the Four Seas had a bright future ahead of them, and they definitely wouldn't give up on this road just because of a conspiracy. The resilience and unity of Shanghai Alliance would probably surprise their enemies, right? Chapter 609. The board meeting lasted for an entire afternoon before dispersing. The enemy's ambitions came in waves. In the afternoon, the bank run caused by Chang and City spread to the other 8 royal cities through various channels. For a moment, the Bank of the Four Seas was in a state of emergency. Meng Zhidao was like a firefighter captain, running to the various royal cities. Bai Hua and the others also took action, going to the various royal cities to clarify the rumors. Only then did the turmoil slightly ease. But it obviously wouldn't be so easy to completely calm it down. The herd mentality of the players was simply too terrifying. They would rather believe it than not. A large amount of money was transferred from the treasury to deal with this bank run. The next day, the Daily News published a special report, fighting back against the rumors spread by the Chang and Evening News and other media. The mountain of gold coins in the Shanghai city's treasury was undoubtedly the most powerful counterattack. Even so, there were still people who were skeptical. Even if they stopped withdrawing money, the players who went to the Bank of the Four Seas to deposit money were greatly weakened. At the entrance of the bank, there was an endless stream of people, and in an instant it became deserted. The Bank of the Four Seas suffered the biggest setback since its establishment. If they didn't respond in time, the losses would be even worse. The enemy's goal was also gradually becoming clear. They knew that these small tricks couldn't completely destroy the Bank of the Four Seas. Their real goal was to crazily seize market share while attacking the Bank of the Four Seas. When the Bank of the Four Seas was in crisis, the Huitong Bank launched all kinds of promotions, attracting a large number of wavering players. In an instant, the Huitong Bank's reputation soared. Bai Hua and the others naturally wouldn't let it go. But all counterattacks had to wait until the matter was clearly investigated before they could implement them. The smell of gunpowder in the two banks was getting thicker and thicker. March 3, North Bay. After a few days of sailing, the disguised fleet led by Ouyang Shua successfully reached the hinterland of Annan. Although they encountered a few waves of Annan warships, they were all deceived. Ouyang Shua's flag signal was that they had suffered a setback at the front line and had to retreat to rest. It was inevitable that they would be laughed at by the warlike navy. Marquis, the location of the island marked on the map is not far ahead. The one who spoke was a middle-aged navigator named Zhang Chenghai. He was a senior navigator recruited by Zheng He from Quanzhou. As far as the eye could see, one could only see jade waves stretching for thousands of li, vast like an ocean. Occasionally there would be clouds rising and falling, and it was faintly discernible. The only thing he didn't see was an island. Ever since Ouyang Shua made another breakthrough in the Yellow Emperor's canon of internal medicine and cultivated it to the 10th layer, his vision, hearing, and other senses had been greatly enhanced. He could clearly see things several li away. Moreover, this was a vast sea. If there really was an island, it was impossible to not see it. Did we go the wrong way? Ouyang Shua asked. I won't, Zhang Chenghai said firmly. Ouyang Shua frowned. Could it be that the treasure map is fake? If that was really the case, it would be a huge embarrassment. Let's continue moving forward. Let's reach the location marked on the map first. Ouyang Shua was also very tenacious. Yes, sir. In less than 20 minutes, the fleet arrived. The further they went, the denser the clouds became, rolling up and down non-stop. Beyond 100 meters, it was impossible to see anything. The range of the clouds and mist was also extremely wide, with no end in sight to the left and right. It was like a curtain in the sky. In the face of this fog, the fleet was like ant. There's actually such a strange place? Ouyang Shua muttered to himself. Although it's common for fog to appear on the sea, it's rare to see such a large fog. From what I can see, this fog didn't just rise, it seems like it's been here for a long time, Zhang Chenghai continued. As a senior navigator, Zhang Chenghai had traveled extensively and seen all kinds of strange places. The fog in front of him was indeed strange and unique, making people flinch at the sight of it. It's been here for a long time? Ouyang Shua's eyes lit up. If that's the case, it really does look like a treasure trove. Ouyang Shua was also puzzled. Even if it was an unnamed island, it was close to the Annan coast, and the game had progressed to the 3rd year of Gaia. Wouldn't the players of the Annan region beat them to it? The fog in front of him explained Ouyang Shua's doubts very well. Only such a harsh environment would cause ships to shrink back. Marquis means that the island is hidden in the thick fog? Zhang Chenghai asked uncertainly. Send 2 small boats into the fog to investigate, Ouyang Shua ordered. Yes, sir. Soon, the 2 boats entered the fog and disappeared. About an hour later, the appointed time was long gone, but the boats still didn't turn back. The fog in front of them suddenly became strange, and a trace of fear appeared in the eyes of the sailors. Could it be that we've encountered the ghost fog? Someone said cautiously. There were rumors about the ghost fog from time to time in the sailing circle. It was said that once a ship entered the ghost fog, it would never come back. It could be said that there was no chance of survival. That was why it was called the ghost fog. However, Ouyang Shua was unmoved. In fact, with his amazing senses, he had already sensed the abnormality that others couldn't. Just 20 minutes ago, he faintly heard a scream coming from the fog. The 2 small boats that had gone ahead to investigate were probably already dead. There must be sea beasts in the fog. Ouyang Shua somewhat regretted not bringing Little Blue with him. As the nemesis of the Azure Sea Beast, What sea beast dared to be presumptuous in front of it? All teams be on guard. Flintlock team, get ready. Enter the fog in battle formation, Ouyang Shua ordered again. Even if it was a dead end, Ouyang Shua had to go. Yes, sir. Ouyang Shua's authority was unquestionable. As soon as the order was given, no matter what the soldiers thought, they put it aside. The 10-headed warship slowly sailed into the fog. Marquis, look. As soon as they entered the fog, Zhang Chenghai hurried over with a compass in his hand. He had a serious expression on his face. The needle on the compass kept swaying without any pattern. It was impossible to determine the exact position. The compass didn't work? Ouyang Shua muttered to himself. He naturally didn't believe in the ghost fog. It was most likely that there was a magnetic field here that caused the compass to fail. This made Ouyang Shua even more certain that there must be an island in the fog. Don't worry about the position. Just keep moving forward, Ouyang Shua said. Understood. The fleet sailed all the way into the fog. There was a vast fog in front of them, and the compass didn't work. They couldn't tell north from south. Moreover, the further they went, the lower the visibility became. The bow and the stern of the same warship couldn't see each other. Light the navigation lights and act as a guide, Ouyang Shua ordered. In an instant, the bright yellow lights lit up one by one, illuminating the surrounding fog. The so-called navigation lights were miniature mobile lighthouses made by the 7th Research Institute based on the navigation lighthouse that Ouyang Shua had obtained before. They were the most effective in the fog. In addition, Ouyang Shua's amazing intuition played a role again. He held the red knight sword and pointed it forward. The sword was pointing in the direction of the fleet. The combination of the two allowed the fleet to magically not lose their way in the fog. They sailed for half an hour. Marquis, something's wrong. Chun Damring, the captain of the guards, ran over. We found the wreckage of 2 boats in the water ahead. Stay alert and prepare for battle. Ouyang Shua was shocked. Yes, sir. Bang! Suddenly, there was a crash from the bottom of the ship. The huge crash shook the crew. Only Ouyang Shua remained motionless. Splash! With a huge splash, 5 or 6 giant soft feet rose from the sea. They were as thick as a person's waist. They looked like giant snakes, and each of them had 2 rows of huge suckers. An octopus monster? Ouyang Shua's eyes turned cold. He leaned forward and slashed down with the red knight sword. Poochie! A massive foot was actually cut into 2 by the scarlet knight sword. It fell onto the deck and was still writhing non-stop. After being injured, the octopus became more and more crazy. It waved its huge tentacles and slapped everywhere. From time to time, it would pull the crew into the water and disappear. Fire! The gun team finally came back to their senses. Unfortunately, the aim of the guns at this time was really not good. Facing the flexible tentacles of the octopus, they only hit it twice. The captain of the gun team was ashamed. He didn't expect that this move would annoy the octopus monster. The 2 longest tentacles swept over at the same time, causing the firearms team to stagger. Those who were slightly weaker directly vomited blood, and their internal organs were displaced. Kill! The personal guards led by Chun Damring caught up to them. Although he wasn't as brave as Ouyang Shua, he was also a general. With the help of the guards, he waved his broadsword and cut off a tentacle. On the other side, Ouyang Shua took advantage of the situation and followed up with another attack. He dodged a tentacle and slashed down with the red knight sword. The red knight sword could cut iron like mud, let alone flesh and blood. Bam! Another limb was brutally slaughtered. After losing 3 tentacles, the ferocious octopus monster finally came to its senses. It knew that the ship in front of it wasn't something it could bully at will, so it could only return to the sea. As for the tentacles that were cut off, they could grow back next time. The whole battle lasted less than 10 minutes. It was thrilling. Ouyang Shua's peerless martial prowess once again caused all the officers and soldiers to be shocked. There was a rumor in the army that the Marquis was like a god of war. However, the Navy had never had the chance to see him. Today, they finally got what they wanted. The Marquis is mighty. During the battle just now, Zhang Qinghai was so scared that he hid in the cabin. At this time, he ran over to congratulate Ouyang Shua. Ouyang Shua didn't mind. Everyone had their own strength. Zhang Qinghai was a navigator, and sailing was his strength. There was no need to be too harsh on him if he was weak on the battlefield. Pack up and continue forward, Ouyang Shua ordered. Yes. Chapter 6:10. Killing the octopus seemed to have reached a critical point. The fog in front of them was getting thinner and thinner. In the end, there was only a thin layer of fog. It didn't mean that they had passed through the fog. As far as the eye could see, the fog was still everywhere. An inconspicuous island was located in the center of the fog, mysterious and lonely. We're here. Ouyang Shua's eyes were filled with anticipation. The entire island was less than 20 square kilometers. Perhaps it was because of the fog, the entire island seemed to be isolated from the rest of the world. When the small animals on the island saw Ouyang Shua's group, they curiously came over without a trace of fear. In the middle of the island, a bald mountain suddenly rose up. It was very eye-catching, like a sharp sword. Seeing this mountain, Ouyang Shua was sure that he had found the right place. The exact location of the treasure was marked in detail on the treasure map. Xue Tu's treasure was hidden in a cave at the foot of the Godly Sword Mountain. The entrance of the cave was blocked by a huge rock. It wasn't that Xue Tu had set up some kind of trap, but to prevent the animals on the island from running in. Move the rock away. Ouyang Shua ordered the guards. Okay. Chen Dameng stepped forward and held the rock with both hands. He stood firmly on the ground and gathered his energy. Hey! The rock didn't move, ha ha ha. The guards laughed unscrupulously, not caring about their captain's face. Chen Dameng usually mingled with his teammates, so he had long lost his captain's dignity. Plus, he liked to show off in front of his subordinates, always bragging about how powerful he was. This time, he was embarrassed, which was exactly what he wanted. Chen Dameng's face turned red. Bastards, why aren't you coming over to help? Coming. Seeing that their captain was about to go crazy, the guards didn't dare to be too presumptuous. Otherwise, their captain would use the excuse of teaching them martial arts as an excuse to teach them a lesson. With the efforts of the guards, the rock was finally moved away. Walking into the cave, they saw that it was pitch black and damp. When they lit the torches, they could finally see their surroundings clearly. The deeper they went, the more spacious the cave became. After walking for more than 20 meters, a golden light suddenly appeared in front of them. The deeper he went, the more dazzling the golden light became. It was as if there was a magical power that attracted Ouyang Shua's gaze. Following the golden light, the passageway suddenly widened. Finally, a spacious hall appeared in front of everyone. It was more than 200 meters in length and width. The golden light they saw earlier came from the hall. The entire hall was filled with a mountain of gold. Millions of gold coins were piled up messily in the hall like garbage, forming a 10-meter-tall mountain of gold, shining with golden light. The dazzling golden light was enough to blind people's eyes. Even Ouyang Shua couldn't help but gasp when he saw this. As far as he could remember, such a large amount of gold coins could only be found in the treasury of Shanghai City. A conservative estimate would be no less than 3 million gold coins. In addition to the gold coins, there were also countless gems, agates, jadites, pure gold utensils, precious swords inlaid with gems, and pearls the size of longan fruits. These treasures were scattered all over the mountain. Although these treasures looked inconspicuous, their value was probably no less than the entire mountain. The Pirate King's lifetime treasure was indeed magnificent. Ouyang Shua's first reaction was to take a panoramic photo as a souvenir. When the entourage saw this mountain of gold, they also felt dizzy. A trace of greed flashed in the eyes of some of them who were not able to maintain their composure. The entourage will each be rewarded with 100 gold coins, Ouyang Shua said straightforwardly. As the saying went, those who saw it had a share. If he didn't reward them at all, he was afraid that some people would bear grudges. Thank you, Marquis. The officers and soldiers instantly came to their senses. As expected, they wiped their saliva and bowed to express their gratitude. 100 gold coins was equivalent to a few months of their pay. Ouyang Shua nodded. He took out a storage bag and put it in front of the mountain. Immediately, the entire mountain turned into a golden river that flowed into the storage bag and slowly disappeared. This scene was really shocking. Ouyang Shua bought a giant space stone in the last auction. His current storage bag was a full 10,000 cubic meters. Even if there was another mountain, it would still be able to store it. Moreover, when the gold coins entered a player's storage bag, they would just turn into a pile of data. What really existed in the storage bag were some treasures like jadeite. When the mountain disappeared, the hall became dark. The final calculation showed that the entire mountain was worth more than 3.85 million gold coins. As for the value of the gems, they would need to find a professional to appraise them. Conservatively speaking, the total value would not be less than 3 million gold coins. This also meant that Ouyang Shua had raked in nearly 7 million gold coins on this trip, which exceeded the total funds raised by the Bank of the Four Seas. If word got out, people would probably go crazy with jealousy. This was not the end. After the mountain was emptied, a worn-out iron box was revealed. Although the box was not eye-catching, it attracted all of Ouyang Shua's attention. According to the usual pattern, the box probably contained the true essence of the treasure. Opening the iron box, there were only 3 items. One was armor, one was a book, and one was a talisman. Ouyang Shua first picked up the armor. It was dark red in color, but it was a half-body armor. In the middle of the armor was a breastplate, and on both sides were 2 lifelike golden dragons coiling around it. The whole design was the most classic twin dragons playing with a pearl. Name: Double Dragon Sky Devouring Armor, God Tier. Type: Heavy Armor. Weight: 25 kg. Defense: 95. Toughness: 85. Characteristics: Force Dispersal, disperses 50% of the attack on the body. Ultimate Skill: Double Dragon Shadow Shield, infuse True Yuan into the armor, forming a layer of True Yuan shield outside the body. 100% defense, lasting for half an hour, cooldown time of 1 month. Restricted professions: General, Swordsman, Bailiff, etc. Evaluation: Forged with Dragon Blood Essence. Nourished by Dragon Blood. Forged by Heavenly Fire. Only the ruler of the world can control it. Bind it with blood, cannot be traded, cannot be dropped, and can evolve again. Remark: the Double Dragon Sky Devouring Armor is a part of the Divine Artifact set, Dragon's Battle. When a complete set is assembled, the set's attributes can be activated. Compared to the purple gold radiant armor that Ouyang Shua was wearing, the Double Dragon Sky Devouring Armor was much stronger. Whether it was a defense or toughness, they had both improved a lot. More importantly, it had added characteristics and ultimate skill. The Force Dispersal characteristic could directly dispel 50% of the attack. It was simply heaven-defying. As for the ultimate skill, the Double Dragon Shadow Shield, it was also a life-saving skill at a critical moment. The only flaw was that the Double Dragon Sky Devouring Armor was only a half-body armor. The radiant armor that Ouyang Shua was wearing now consisted of a helmet, armor, wrist guards, knee pads, and boot. After thinking about it, Ouyang Shua took off the radiant armor and put on the Double Dragon Sky Devouring Armor. At this point, the purple gold radiant armor could no longer keep up with Ouyang Shua's need. Moreover, Bai Qi and the other generals were all wearing the same armor, which did not show Ouyang Shua's unique status. Ouyang Shua only took off the main armor, helmet, wrist guards, knee pads, and other accessories. Before he obtained higher-grade equipment, he would still have to wear it. He did not know if he would have the opportunity to collect the Dragon Battle set in the future. Immediately after, Ouyang Shua picked up the booklet. Furious Sea Battle Training Manual. After using it, you will be able to grasp the secret training method of the special unit, the Furious Sea Battle. Furious Sea Battle. The legendary guardian of the sea god, skilled in sea battles, able to fight on warships and able to capture and kill in the sea. Proficient in water, especially in sea battles. After looking at the attributes, Ouyang Shua was overjoyed. It was truly a case of walking on iron shoes in a fruitless search, only to find it by chance. After a few battles with Annan on the water, Ouyang Shua deeply felt that the combat power of the territory's navy was on the low side. Compared to the powerful army, they were even worse. Moreover, they lacked the navy's generals, so their combat power was greatly reduced. With the Furious Sea Battle Training Manual, the rise of the Nanyang Navy was not far away. Finally, there was the talisman. It was an extremely rare Emperor-level summoning talisman. To avoid unnecessary trouble, Ouyang Shua planned to use this precious summoning talisman after returning to Shanghai City. With these three treasures, Ouyang Shua had no regret. Not only did he have no regrets on this trip, but he also had no regrets from the auction where he entered the treasure mountain and returned empty-handed. Any one of these three treasures was comparable to the 10 auction items. Bloody slaughter was worthy of his title as the Pirate King. None of the treasures in his collection were inferior. After packing up, Ouyang Shua was about to leave when he noticed a key at the corner of the iron box. Picking it up, he found that the key was carved from an unknown stone. It was simple and unadorned. Ouyang Shua couldn't figure out what this key was, so he threw it into his storage bag. After packing up, Ouyang Shua left the deserted island without hesitation. On the other side, Zheng He had become the eternal nightmare of the Annan Navy players. After separating, Zheng He led his troops and took the initiative to attack the vanguard of the Annan Navy. The two fleets had a head-on battle on the sea. The result of the battle was naturally a complete victory for the Shanghai City Navy. Facing the cannons of Shanghai City, the Allied Navy was beaten to the point that they could barely fight back. Immediately afterward, Zheng He acted out of character. Instead of chasing after the enemy, he retreated. How could this be? The main force of the Allied fleet, which was still a little hesitant, got the news and desperately chased after them. However, not only did the Shanghai City fleet have superior warships, but they also had multiple buffs. Their sailing speed was several times faster than the Allied Navy. How could they catch up? At this time, Zheng He relied on his speed advantage to make a big detour. The three major formations split into 3 routes and outflanked the Allied Navy from 3 sides. Facing the intertwined cannons network on 3 sides, the Allied Navy was directly stunned. The cunning Zheng He was like an assassin. He never entangled with the enemy too much and retreated after one strike. After succeeding, he quickly retreated, not giving the enemy a chance to engage in close combat. Chapter 6:11. After inflicting heavy losses on the main force of the Allied Navy, the Shanghai City Navy disappeared without a trace again. When they reappeared, they appeared on both sides of the harbor. At this time, Zheng He was like Hua Tsubing, who specialized in catching the enemy off guard and giving the enemy a fatal blow in the most unlikely place. The fleets on both sides of the harbor were still on their way to gather at the harbor. They didn't expect that the enemy ships that were supposed to be fighting with the main fleet would appear behind them. This blow was too fatal. Zheng He divided his troops into 2 groups, like ghosts, nibbling away at the fleets that came one after another along the way. The morale of the Annan district fell to the lowest point. The overall strength of the navy near the harbor was directly reduced by more than 40%. When Ouyang Shua led the disguised fleet to the agreed gathering point, the entire sea area was under the control of the Shanghai City fleet. The players of the Annan district had lost the possibility of defeating the enemy at sea. Under the leadership of Ruan Tianke, the Allied forces began to set up defenses in the coastal port cities, ready to welcome a landing battle, or even a land battle. Unfortunately, they were destined to be disappointed. Ouyang Shua didn't want to play with them, so he directly led his troops back. This national war started abruptly and ended abruptly. The players of the Annan district were waiting in the harbor, waiting for the enemy to attack. They looked around, but all they saw was the vast sea. After waiting for a whole day, someone asked uncertainly, "Alliance Master, it seems that they left?" Bastard! Even with Ruan Tiank's self-restraint, he couldn't help but slap the table angrily. The lords looked at each other. This time, the Annan district had lost a lot of face. The enemy regarded the entire Annan Sea as their back garden, coming and going as they pleased, which made them lose face. March 10th, Beihai City. I'll leave the formation of the ocean fleet and the training of the furious sea battle to the general, Ouyang Shua told Jing He before leaving. Please rest assured, Marquis. It will be ready within a month. After 7 voyages to the west, no one knew better than Zheng He how to prepare for an ocean voyage. As for the training of the furious sea battle, it would be handed over to General Kai Mao for the time being. Ouyang Shua nodded and turned to leave. Ouyang Shua had obtained over 80,000 merit points for inadvertently provoking the Kingdom War, and it had exceeded the harvest of a single battle. This was enough to prove that the Kingdom War was the best battlefield for feudal lords to earn merit point. At this point, Ouyang Shua's total merit points had finally reached 500,000, and it was just over half. Apart from that, Ouyang Shua had also obtained 100,000 reputation points in one fell swoop because of this famous battle. The rewards of this trip were enough to put other players to shame. After returning to Shanghai City, Ouyang Shua found out what had happened to the Bank of the Four Seas recently. Tell Black Snake and Meng Jida to come see me quickly. Ouyang Shua's face was gloomy. Yes, sir. Bai Nanpu carefully retreated. He could faintly feel the anger in the Marquis's heart. Greetings, Marquis. After a while, Stygian Snake and Meng Jida came to the study. Black Snake was still expressionless, but Meng Jida's face flashed with a trace of shame and even a trace of apprehension. All of you, speak. What exactly is going on? Ouyang Shua's tone was low, and he emanated a dignified aura. Reporting to the Marquis. Black Snake was the first to step forward. According to the Black Snake Guard's investigation, the source of this bank run is Chang'an City. The parties involved include thousands of adventure-type players, Chang'an Evening News and 3 other local media, and the manager of the Bank of the Four Seas Chang'an branch, Li Wei. You're saying that there's a traitor? Do you have any concrete evidence? Ouyang Shua's face instantly turned solemn. Ouyang Shua was very sensitive to betrayal. According to the investigation, when the bank run happened just now, Li Wei suppressed it without authorization and handled it improperly. After that, he ignored the bank manager's advice and didn't report it to the headquarters in time, which ultimately led to the bank run getting out of hand. The Black Snake Guards followed the clues and found that Li Wei was in contact with the Yellow Flame Alliance, Black Snake reported methodically. Meng Jida's face became paler and paler. Where is Li Wei now? Ouyang Shua asked. He has already left the bank, but his whereabouts are still being tracked by the Black Snake Guards, Black Snake said. Li Wei probably wouldn't have dreamed that Shanghai City had such an intelligence agency that had been watching him for a long time, right? The Black Snake Guards would always keep an eye on the important personnel of the territory. It didn't matter if they were guilty or innocent. This was to ensure that these people were always under the surveillance of the Black Snake Guard. Ouyang Shua nodded and coldly said, "Immediately arrest Li Wei and bring him to justice. Throw him into Shanghai City's prison and hand him over to the Punishment Bureau for trial. Since Li Wei is already a citizen of Shanghai City, He can't escape the punishment of the territory code and get away with it. Otherwise, where will Shanghai City's prestige go? Understood. Black Snake nodded vigorously. Although Li Wei was an adventure-type player, he had already registered in Shanghai City. His reincarnation point was automatically recorded in Shanghai City's reincarnation hall. Even if he committed suicide, he could only reincarnate in Shanghai City. Thus, Ouyang Shua wasn't worried that Li Wei could escape punishment. When players joined the territory, they would enjoy the benefits of the territory, but they would naturally be subject to the corresponding restrictions. Otherwise, how would the territory lord rule over the players? Let's use this case as the beginning and start the era of law in the territory. Ouyang Shua thought to himself. Seeing that the Marquis was going to pursue this matter to the end, Meng Jida couldn't hold himself back anymore. He knelt on one knee and said, "This lowly subject was negligent in his use of people. Please punish me, Marquis." After all, he was the one who had recruited Li Wei. Now that something had happened, Meng Jida naturally couldn't escape the blame. Ouyang Shua's eyes flashed when he saw this. Punishment, of course, punishment is necessary. Ouyang Shua couldn't hide the disappointment in his heart. He said in a deep voice, "Not only were you negligent in your use of people, but the operation of the Bank of the Four Seas branch is also problematic. A branch manager suppressed an emergency without permission, and no one else was able to skip ranks and report it to the headquarters. This matter is ridiculous." Meng Jida's face turned even paler. "Come, summon him." Present. Bai Nanpu walked in. Imperial Edict. Manager Meng Jida of the Bank of the Four Seas was negligent in his use of people and neglected his duties. His salary will be forfeited for 1 year. At the same time, he will be demoted to vice manager and will be investigated, Ouyang Shua said. Understood. Bai Nanpu went to draft the summons. "Thank you, Marquis, for your mercy." Meng Jida thought that he would lose his position this time, but he didn't expect that he would still be investigated. Ouyang Shua didn't express his opinion and said indifferently, "The position of manager of the bank will be held by Director Fanli. You will still be in charge of the daily affairs of the bank. I hope you won't disappoint me again. I won't let you down." Meng Jida was moved to tears when he heard this. "You may leave. I will hold a temporary board meeting to clean up the aftermath of this incident." Ouyang Shua was very confident in dealing with the aftermath of this incident. Understood. Meng Jida bade farewell. Looking at Meng Jida's somewhat bleak back, Ouyang Shua let out a long sigh. He punished Meng Jida this time for 2 reasons. One was to enforce the law, and the other was to give an explanation to his allies. After Bai Hua and the other board members invested in the Bank of the Four Seas, they didn't manage the daily operations of the bank, but let the Shanghai City team manage it. Since they made a mistake, they naturally had to take responsibility. Otherwise, how could they live up to the trust they had placed in them? As for the temporary board meeting, Ouyang Shua wasn't in a hurry. He wanted to stabilize the situation first. The trump card in Ouyang Shua's hand was naturally the treasure he had just obtained. In the afternoon, Bai Shaosheng was invited to Shanghai City. After a few interactions, the two of them could be considered half-friends. Marquis' disappearance caused a stir in the wilderness. Bai Shaosheng said with a smile. Ouyang Shua shook his head. "When has the wilderness ever been truly peaceful? It's the same with or without me." "Marquis, you're too modest." Bai Shaosheng flattered and then said, "I've heard about the incident with the Chang and Evening News. It's just that with the strength of the Shanghai Alliance, they didn't inform us in advance. I didn't expect the matter to become bigger and bigger. I hope Marquis won't blame us." No matter what, Bai Shaosheng was a media giant. How could the small actions of the Chang and Evening News escape Bai Shaosheng's eyes? He didn't inform Shanghai City because he wanted to maintain a neutral position and didn't want to be involved in the conflict between the two groups. When he saw Ouyang Shua this time, He saw that the other party's temperament had become more and more calm. Bai Shaoxing felt that it was necessary to explain to Ouyang Shua to avoid any misunderstandings. Now, Ouyang Shua's every word and action would be analyzed by others. Ouyang Shua understood Bai Shaoxing's way of doing things. The media was supposed to be neutral. Once they sided with one side, it would be difficult for them to get away. It was unwise. Most importantly, the cooperation between the Wilderness News Agency and the Shanghai Alliance had just begun. The relationship between the two wasn't close enough to the point where they could communicate with each other in advance. That's right, the Bank of the Four Seas deserves this calamity. Ouyang Shua didn't mention it and said with a smile, "But right now, there's something that I need your help with. Marquis, please speak." Ouyang Shua's generosity obviously made Bai Shaoxing very happy. "I've done something big on this trip out to sea, and I hope that your news agency can publicize it," Ouyang Shua said as he briefly described the search for the treasure and the triggering of the national war. The more Bai Shaoxing listened, the more shocked he became. When he saw the picture of the Golden Mountain that Ouyang Shua had taken, he was even more dumbfounded. Marquis' way of doing things is really grand. After a long while, Bai Shaoxing finally came back to his senses. He pondered for a moment and said carefully, "Marquis has made a name for himself abroad and strengthened the reputation of our China region. In comparison, there are people in our country who use such despicable method. It's really despicable." Bai Shaoxing finally expressed his attitude. Ouyang Shua heard this and smiled slightly, not stingy with his praise for Bai Shaoxing. No wonder he was a media giant. Bai Shaoxing's plan for Ouyang Shua was clear. As for how to use these materials to create a beautiful article for Shanghai City and completely reverse the unfavorable situation of the Bank of the Four Seas, Bai Shaoxing was naturally an expert in this. Chapter 612. The next day, on the front page of the Daily News, there was an article with the title "A Hero in the War of Nations, but Hidden Arrows Are Hard to Guard Against." Bai Shaoxing used vivid ink to describe the heroic deeds of Marquis Lianzhou, who started the war, defeated the Annan Navy, and seized a large number of treasures. He described not E as a hero in the War of Nations. Immediately after, he changed the topic and mentioned the Bank of the Four Seas that had just passed. According to the Black Snake Guard's investigation, it was vaguely revealed that this was a meticulously planned conspiracy. The goal was to achieve an ulterior motive through unfair competition. The two incidents were cleverly linked together to arouse the players' common hatred for a common enemy. While clearing the Bank of the Four Seas grievances, it also vaguely attacked the mastermind behind the scenes. When the report came out, it naturally caused a huge uproar. For the players in the China region, the War of Nations was a very hot topic. Although Ouyang Shua did it for personal reasons, in the eyes of the players, he was a great hero. Just this point alone was enough to raise Shanghai City's prestige to the peak. Any kind of negative news would have to retreat in the face of such a trend. As such, the players naturally hated this backstabbing villain behind the scenes. The irrefutable evidence was irrefutable. Any player with a bit of brains knew who the mastermind behind the scenes was referring to. For a moment, the direction of public opinion was one-sided. The low popularity of the Bank of the Four Seas skyrocketed again. Correspondingly, the recently popular Huitong Bank's reputation plummeted. No matter what tricks they played, it was of no use. Ouyang Shua's move caught many unprepared. It could be said that he had overcome 1,000 caddies with little effort. Jingchu Province, Danyang City. Bastard. After reading the report, Lord Chunshin was extremely resentful towards Bai Shaoxing's position. Such an obvious bias could only be said that the Wilderness newspaper was slowly leaning towards the Shanghai Alliance. Shanghai City's influence was constantly seeping into other areas. A meticulously planned show was easily broken by Hu Sezwui. This caused the extremely conceited Lord Chunshin to feel very upset. It was as if he had painstakingly prepared a big move and wanted to KO the opponent in one hit, only to find out that the opponent only stretched out a finger and the move was broken. Such a feeling of defeat was really stifling. Just wait and see. Lord Chuanshan's eyes were firm. This was a person who would not easily give up. Shanghai City, Eastern Fence Sword Faction. On the cliff platform, 2 female disciples wearing the uniform of the inner court were chatting. "Fei, I heard that your father was demoted," said a slightly chubby female disciple. The other petite female disciple was clearly in low spirit. It was Meng Fei. His father had been working hard during the bank run. Unexpectedly, he was still demoted. How Meng Fei's heart was felt when she saw her father's back. It was not because she was worried about her father's position. In my opinion, Ouyang is too ruthless. He doesn't care about his feelings at all. The slightly plump female disciple was naturally Meng Fei's classmate and good friend, Tan Xiaoli. It was Ouyang Shua who allowed them to join the Eastern Fence Sword Faction. Shaoxing against Yang Tu joined sect. When they first joined Shanghai City, Ouyang Shua was still the #1 feudal lord, and the two of them could still pay a visit to the feudal lord's mansion because of their relationship as classmates. Now, it would take a lot of courage to walk into the Protectorate General's residence. There was a huge gap between the two. Even at Ouyang Shua's wedding, they were just the most ordinary guests. They did not even have the qualifications to be toasted by Ouyang Shua. Meng Fei's petty thoughts and confused feelings from before had long vanished into thin air. Ouyang has his own difficulties. Father, you're already taking extra care of him by allowing him to stay on. Meng Fei wasn't an unreasonable person. She understood the situation. Tan Xiaoli let out a long sigh. How could she not know? It was just that the world had changed so much that people could not help but sigh. Since when did that ordinary-looking young man in real life become an existence that countless people in the game had to look up to? Even when they talked about him in private, they would unconsciously use honorific. I heard that Ruan Ping is still thinking of a counterattack. Tan Xiaoli changed the topic. Him. Meng Fei raised an eyebrow. A hint of disdain flashed across her face. She said indifferently, "He's just putting on a one-man show. I'm afraid he doesn't even know how big the gap between the two of them is." Damn girl, when did your words become so poisonous? Tan Xiaoli was surprised. In the eyes of outsiders, Meng Fei was a typical obedient girl. She was shy and introverted. Even if she was dissatisfied with someone, she would not show it on her face. What he said just now was really shocking. "I'm just speaking the truth," Meng Fei said indifferently. "At least he's still fighting." Tan Xiaoli shook her head and sighed again. "What about us? We don't even know where our future is. We also don't know when the sect system will be activated in the wilderness. The martial world is still an illusory term. It will come." Meng Fei's eyes were firm. The current swordsmen, including the sect disciples, were still in a dormant stage. They cultivated hard, honed their martial arts, and endured loneliness. They were waiting for the arrival of the martial world to shine. A breeze blew past, carrying away the young girl's whisper. That afternoon, Ouyang Shua held an emergency board meeting. His goal was naturally to settle scores after the fall. Li Wei had already been imprisoned by the Black Snake Guards and awaited the disciplinary bureau's punishment. If nothing unexpected happened, Li Wei would spend the next year in a cold prison cell. A year was the maximum time Gaia could hold a player in custody. It could be said that Li Wei's gaming career was destined to end in desolation and dismal. Even if Li Wei was released from prison, he would not be able to stand up after offending Shanghai City. When the other players received the news, they all felt apprehensive. As for the players who maliciously accessed the files, although they were instigated by someone, there was no problem with the program. Hence, Ouyang Shua naturally could not pursue the matter. He did not want to leave a negative image of himself as a vengeful person. However, the leader of the group needed to be punished. There was no need for Ouyang Shua to say anything about punishing a few ordinary players. There would naturally be someone to handle it. After all, there were 5 or 6 super guilds under the Shanghai Alliance. Guilds were the true experts when it came to dealing with adventure-type players. The most important part of the meeting was to discuss the punishment for the 3 media outlets, including the Wuchang and Evening News. Gaia has a rule that once a news outlet reports false news and causes a negative impact, their media qualifications will be revoked. The relevant personnel will also be banned from the news industry. Ouyang Shua was very familiar with the game's settings. He introduced, "I have already appealed to Gaia. I believe there will be an outcome soon." Even though Chang, an Evening News' editor-in-chief, might not know of this setting. They thought that it was just a column on the official forum that could be randomly written. Little did they know that Gaia had already implanted the relevant Federation laws into the game. Since they wanted to make the game more realistic, how could they lack the restrictions of the law? These people were a little too naive. Ouyang Shua guessed that Gaia was probably waiting for such an opportunity to straighten out the various media outlets that had been popping up like mushrooms after the rain. After all, for an industry to flourish, a healthy format was extremely necessary. It was because of this that Ouyang Shua was confident that Gaia would severely punish the Wuchang and Evening News. Among the players, Ouyang Shua was the only one who had schemed against Gaia. "Good, we should teach those bastards a lesson." The Siege Lion cheered. In this incident, Black Lion City was the worst hit. Even if they are disbanded, they can still live a good life with other people's commissions. Feng Qiuhuang was very concerned about these matters. "Then what should we do?" The Siege Lion was a little indignant. "Leave this to us," Bright Moon Illuminates the River said calmly. "If we don't kill them until they reincarnate, how can we vent our anger?" There was a hint of killing intent in his tone. Ouyang Shua did not comment on this. It was indeed more appropriate for the guild to deal with some matters. In a tacit agreement, no one mentioned how to take revenge on the Yan-Wang alliance. In reality, such a huge organization could not be dealt with in a short time. None of the people present were boorish. Ouyang Shua was already a little annoyed with the Yan-Wang alliance's little tricks. From now on, the Shanghai alliance's strategy against the Yan-Wang alliance would slowly change from passive defense to active offense. After returning to Shanghai City, Ouyang Shua was already planning some countermeasures. However, he did not have a clear plan for these matters, so it was not convenient to discuss them. Ouyang Shua's true goal for this board meeting was to stabilize the army's morale. Evidently, this goal had been achieved. Apart from this, the Bank of the Four Seas' weakness was also exposed. They did not have a single partner in Chang'an and Xiangyang royal cities. The other party chose Chang'an because they saw through this weakness. Hence, in this meeting, Ouyang Shua took out a list of guilds and territories that were still standing strong and had a good reputation in the past 5 years. Ouyang Shua suggested that they focus on these guilds and territories. After this incident, Ouyang Shua's reputation had increased by another level. Although the others were a little suspicious of Ouyang Shua's confidence, they still chose to believe him. Not long after, Ouyang Shua would be leaving. These matters naturally had to be handled by Feng Qiuhuang and the others. It was precisely because of this that Ouyang Shua had to make things clear in order to prevent any delays. The Bank of the Four Seas territory would definitely expand. Chapter 6:13. At the North Bay Pier, Ouyang Shua was seeing someone off. This person was middle-aged and had an ordinary appearance. If not for the general uniform he was wearing, he would have been mistaken for an ordinary farmer. This general was the general that Ouyang Shua had summoned through the summoning talisman, Shi Lang. Shi Lang, also known as Duke Zhua, was from Jinjiang, Fujian. He was a famous general in the late Ming and early Qing dynasty. He had served as the deputy general of the Qing army, the commander of the Fujian navy, and other important positions. He was deeply trusted by the Kangxi emperor. Shi Lang was good at military management, especially in naval warfare. The troops under his command were known for their speed, bravery, and decisiveness. People gave him the nickname of Thunderbolt of the Sea. The most glorious thing in his life was leading the Qing army. Shi Lang's attributes were also very dazzling. To be able to serve such a general, Ouyang Shua's luck had turned for the better. Name: Shi Lang, imperial level, title: Marquis Jinghai Dynasty, late Ming, early Qing, identity: Shanghai City General, occupation: Special General, loyalty: 75 Commander, 88 Force, 85 Intelligence, 75 Politics, 70 Specialty, Naval Warfare: increase the range and power of cannons by 10, increase the speed of warships by 30, increase the defense of warships by 25, increase the morale of naval warfare by 35. Martial arts. Jinghai True Scripture Evaluation. General Shi Lang was a man of few knowledge. He was very strong, proficient in formations, and good at naval warfare. He was familiar with islands and sea affairs. He dared to say what others dared not say and do what others dared not do. When mentioning Shi Lang, players might not be familiar with him. However, Zheng Qinggong, another famous general who recovered Izhou, was praised by later generations. Why? Because Shi Lang had changed allegiance 3 times, served the Ming army twice, and surrendered to the Qing army twice. It inevitably attracted criticism from later generations. His position in history had always been controversial. Was he a hero or a villain? After Zheng Qinggong recovered Izhou from the Dutch, he used it as the last base to resist the Qing. The Qing army sent troops to attack Izhou several times, but they all returned in defeat. In the 22nd year of the Qing Kangxi Emperor, Shi Lang led 20,000 elite soldiers and 300 warships to conquer Izhou. With this achievement, Shi Lang was conferred the title of Marquis Jinghai by the Kangxi Emperor and reached the peak of his career. From his personal ability to his achievements, Shi Lang was worthy of the praise of the world. What really aroused controversy was his repeated life experiences in the Ming and Qing armies. Shi Lang was born in the late Ming dynasty. In his early years, he was a subordinate of Zheng Zhilong, Zheng Qinggong's father. Later on, the Qing army marched south with irresistible force. Zheng Zhilong surrendered to the enemy at the last moment. Shi Lang also surrendered to the Qing army. The Qing army ordered Zheng Zhilong to surrender his son Zheng Qinggong, but Zheng Qinggong was ashamed of his father's conduct, so he broke off relations with his father and led his troops to continue to resist the Qing. Zheng Qinggong thought highly of Shi Lang's ability to command troops and fight. He kept lobbying Shi Lang, inviting him to join the anti-Qing volunteer army. After much consideration, Shi Lang decided to leave the Qing army and once again returned to Zheng Qinggong's anti-Qing army. Shi Lang was a straightforward person who dared to speak his mind. Zheng Qinggong was also a straightforward person with a fiery temper. Therefore, it was inevitable that there would be conflicts between the two of them. By this time, Shi Lang was already dissatisfied with Zheng Qinggong because of his great merit, while Zheng Qinggong, because of Shi Lang's arrogance and despotism, gradually distanced himself from him. Zheng Qinggong associated this conflict with the suspicion that Shi Lang was plotting a rebellion. In his anger, he ordered his men to surround Shi Lang's residence, and arrested Shi Lang, his father Shi Dashuan, and his younger brother Shi Xian. After Shi Lang was arrested, he was imprisoned on a ship. Some of his former subordinates and trusted aides sympathized with him, so they secretly released him. After escaping, Shi Lang returned to the inland and sought refuge with Zheng Qinggong's uncle, Zheng Zhibao. He asked Zheng Zhibao to mediate between the two of them. However, the unforgiving Zheng Qinggong did not buy it. Unexpectedly, he secretly sent assassins to assassinate Shi Lang, insisting that Shi Lang be put to death as soon as possible. Because someone tipped off Shi Lang, his life was spared. But Jing Qinggong, whose plan had failed, became even angrier out of humiliation. Unexpectedly, he ordered Shi Lang's father and younger brother to be executed. From this point on, Shi Lang and Jing Qinggong had formed a blood feud as deep as the sea. With nowhere else to go, and with his heart set on revenge, he was forced to surrender to the Qing dynasty in the 8th year of Xuanzhi. Therefore, the so-called repetition was in fact a last resort. Not long after recovering Izhou, Shi Lang submitted a Chun Izhou abandoning the advantages and disadvantages, explaining the importance of Izhou to Emperor Kangxi. He also suggested that Emperor Kangxi vigorously encourage the economic development of Izhou and reduce taxes, in order to obtain a stable and prosperous Izhou island. At the same time, he also strongly urged Emperor Kangxi to abolish the boundary relocation and sea prohibition order that had been in place for many years, and return the land to the people. Later, Emperor Kangxi accepted Shi Lang's suggestion and exempted millions of people from the suffering of migration. From this, it could be said that Shi Lang not only had the merit of recovering the island, but also protecting it. It could be said that his contributions would last for 1,000 years. Shi Lang was summoned and immediately appointed by Ouyang Shuo as the commander of the Jiaozhou fleet. At the same time, Ouyang Shuo also directly conferred Shi Lang the military rank of third-rank general, Hunghai general. Such treatment could be said to be an extraordinary honor. Appointing Shi Lang as the commander of the Jiaozhou fleet was naturally also considered. Historically, Shi Lang was very familiar with Jiaozhou and the waters of Quanzhou, which would be of great help to Ouyang Shuo's future plans. Shi Lang's mission was to train the Jiaozhou fleet into shape within half a year. After obtaining the treasures of the North Sea Bay, Ouyang Shuo's ambition intensified. He was no longer satisfied with expanding the Navy's 3 major fleets to their full strength within a year. Instead, he gave them half a year. As for the Jiaozhou fleet's first fleet's commander-in-chief, Firework Freak, he would accompany Ouyang Shuo on the Great Ocean Voyage. The first fleet led by Firework Freak was temporarily stationed at the North Sea harbor. Ouyang Shuo had his own considerations in choosing Firework Freak as his follower. The few naval generals in the territory were basically inshore or even inland river generals. There were almost no deep-sea generals. Ignoring Shanghai City, even in the entire China, it was difficult to find a naval general who was adept at deep-sea warfare. It was precisely because of this that the territory needed to nurture them themselves. And compared to Kai Mao, Pei Donglai, and the other naval generals, Firework Freak was a player. Not only did he have terrifying talent, he also had a broad vision and knowledge that the ancients did not have. His growth potential was astonishing, and he was highly malleable. He was naturally the most suitable candidate for the future deep-sea generals. After sending Shi Lang off, Ouyang Shuo began to make preparations for the Great Ocean Voyage. Chang, an evening news, and the other 2 local media outlets had been forcefully disbanded by Gaia, causing a huge uproar in the wilderness. Ouyang Shuo no longer paid attention to the fates of those people. There were naturally people who would take care of it. The Bank of the Four Seas was once again on the right track. There was no need for Ouyang Shuo to worry. With Meng Jida's setback, he would probably use it as a warning and carry out a drastic reform of the Bank of the Four Seas. The affairs of the territory were managed by the 4 division heads and the various county governors. It was also orderly. The first thing Ouyang Shuo needed to do was to distribute the millions of gold coins obtained from the North Sea Bay's treasure trove. The gems, jade artifacts, and other treasures in the treasure trove were evaluated to be worth more than 3 million. Together with the 885 million gold coins, the total was more than 7 million. Such a huge sum of money was coveted by the division chiefs and the county governor. Unfortunately, Ouyang Shua's words completely severed their hope. The territory's budget has already been adjusted once, so there will not be a second adjustment. The 7 million gold coins obtained this time will be earmarked for special purposes. There will be a specific plan, Ouyang Shua said. First, Ouyang Shua would take out 2 million gold coins to support the expansion of the Mountain Sea Guards, Black Snake Guards, and the Military Intelligence Department. The use of intelligence was becoming more and more obvious. Ouyang Shua did not hesitate to bet on the 3 intelligence agencies, hoping to receive a generous return. With this investment, the responsibilities of the 3 intelligence agencies would also undergo a slight adjustment. First, the Mountain Sea Guards' activities would no longer be limited to the territory. The 2 intelligence agencies, the Mountain Sea Guards and Black Snake Guards, would cover the entire China region. The difference was that the Mountain Sea Guards focused on the indigenous forces, while the Black Snake Guards focused on the player forces. The 2 did not interfere with each other and work together. Other than that, the 2 intelligence agencies would extend their tentacles to the Yan-Huang Alliance's territory this year. Passively taking a beating was not Ouyang Shua's style. Second, the expansion of the intelligence agencies overseas. Other than domestic intelligence, the Black Snake Guards would expand their international intelligence in Gaia for 3 years, gathering information in advance for the future wars. Their first target was Annan, who had just been tricked by Ouyang Shua. Just this alone showed Ouyang Shua's great ambition. The Black Snake's blood boiled when he heard this. As a former international mercenary, the Black Snake's international vision was unquestionable. The Black Snake Guards would once again soar. If he really wanted to achieve these 2 goals, 2 million gold coins was just the beginning. Secondly, Ouyang Shua would allocate 500,000 gold coins to the Chamberlain of Dependencies. The first half of the year would be the year that the Chamberlain of Dependencies led by Zhang Yi would show their strength. Ouyang Shua naturally had to support them. Lobbying, sowing discord, no matter which one it was, they all needed real money. Next, Ouyang Shua turned his gaze towards the Southwest University China Hall and the Military Martial Arts Hall. At the end of the day, the 2 institutions were the blood-producing machines of the territory. They were the driving force that supported the territory's development. Disregarding everything else, more than half of the civil and military officials in the territory benefited from the 2 institutions. Although the institutions were a holy land of culture, it was too vulgar to talk about money. In reality, that was not the case. Recruiting hundreds and thousands of lecturers, improving the institution's facilities, providing for tens of thousands of scholars, supporting students, etc. No matter which one it was not a small expenditure. The historical Jixia Academy relied on the financial support of the entire Qi kingdom. Thus, Ouyang Shua did not hesitate to throw in another 1 million gold coins, hoping that the territory would welcome the next explosion of talent. He hoped that the 2 institutions would truly become the top institutions in the Southwest region, or even the entire China region. Accept the talents of the world, be inclusive, with the momentum of 100 rivers flowing into the sea, swallow 10,000 miles. This was Ouyang Shua's ambition. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.